You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 606, where tonight we are going to break down, okay, maybe, I don't want to sound hyperbolic here, but arguably some of the best Star Wars, if not the best Star Wars we've ever had, definitely belongs in that conversation of what really is the best Star Wars. Your mileage may vary, of course, but what an incredible arc and almost penultimate arc to this whole series kind of being wrapped up. So to break all this down with me tonight is, of course, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, and how are you feeling after those last 3 episodes?
You know, I think Lucid Truth may have said it better or best in Discord today, where he said that he was just literally on the edge of his seat, like, and he didn't really even know why. Like, I think it was the Mon Mothma
right.
arc in the 3rd episode, but I'm with you, man. This is, I mean, it's not hyperbolic at all. I think when you think about intensity, I mean, this arc really brought it in spades. And I think if you look at a single episode, like episode 8 in particular, it might be, I don't say this very often, Howard. Actually, I don't say this ever, because I don't get into these types of discussions, and really there's a lot of fan service that goes with this type of comment. Mm-hmm. But I really do think that there are a number of elements in episode 8 that are absolutely award like worthy, and would be a travesty if it weren't even at least nominated, when you think about all of the music and the cinematography and the acting and the story and the writing. It was just absolutely incredibly powerful stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's like Emmy award winning, Emmy consideration type stuff, the caliber. Yeah. We've talked about all that. We'll get into that in our opening thoughts. But yeah, before we get started, how about some thank yous to some very special friends?
Yeah, huge thanks to all of our Patreon members, cantinacast.com/Patreon. If you are curious about that, I'm not part of the tribe members. Special thanks to Alex, Danny, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Rich, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, Readerborn, and I've got a Brad Phelan. And our Delusions of Grandeur members are top tier. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Rob. Again, cantinacast.com/Patreon. If you are curious about that, we do have a show this weekend. We are going to cover 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith. So that's really exciting. We got to see it in the theaters. I got to see it in D-Box. That was really cool. So it's going to be neat to reflect on some of that. Huge shout out to the people over in the live stream too. If you're listening to this, thanks for the download. We'd love to invite you out to the cantinacast.com/YouTube, just cantinacast.com/YouTube. And you could join some of these amazing people like John Maloney, My Star Wars Guy, Sky, Kathy, Alex, Music Train, Matthew, and Rebel Scum getting in there right at the last minute. We'll come back and grab everyone else we haven't seen yet at the end of the show.
Yep. Okay, Sunday we've got the Patreon show that Jonesy mentioned, and then we've also got we're breaking all this down, of course, the finale next week. But until then, Lauren has a full review of The Wayseeker. This is the latest novel from Justina Ireland. It takes place during the time of the High Republic, and specifically around 2 famous characters that you're probably already familiar with. So this is the Acolyte book that came out. So that book is officially out as of, I think, yesterday, and Lauren's got a full breakdown on Jedi Novel Archive. So if you head out to cantinacast.com/YouTube or youtube.com/cantinacast, you can see it there on the new videos. So please watch the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not there, and leave comments. She's pretty good about responding back to those comments. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think about that book as well. Okay, let's get into opening thoughts. I know I've already kind of rambled on a few things, but what else do you want to add into like how you felt watching this? What did you think about this arc? And then I was kind of trying to throw this question out there of like, okay, we've had a year progress since the last episode. Did it feel like things had changed? And I'm going to keep coming back to this because it was one of the things that we identified in our final hype show about whether or not it would feel weird or disjointed because we would be, jumping a whole year and not have the context of some of these situations that we're developing off screen, if you will. I think this one had some things that I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to accept that these things happened or these relationships spurred or, started to deteriorate or whatever. But it did feel like, okay, some time has passed and people have changed, which is not a bad thing, but did it feel awkward in the context of having watched the last episode a year before?
I think of all of them, this is the 3rd arc, of these 2 breaks, This one probably felt the more natural. Like there were some things that progressed. Like Ghorman got much worse, right? They got more organized, but tensions are much worse. The Empire is doing a lot of things. The propaganda machine is all, you don't know what's fact and what's fiction anymore. I think also what we see with Yavin and seeing the progression there, even just over a year, how much more organized they are. I think those made a lot more sense. I think there were some parts that made a little, or maybe a little more disappointing, I think, in some ways. I think her arc was maybe a little bit frustrating because it wasn't really clear what has really changed for her in the last year. Where has she gone from where we left off, which we thought was on a high note, some things we're really going to do. And then her arc was really one of more of sacrifice at the end of the day. So that was a little less than satisfying in some ways, just because we had some expectations going into that. So maybe that's on us. But I think overall, though, I think this is kind of what I was expecting and hoping for, where we would make use of the year between and show meaningful progression without having to get into all of the weeds and the details of how we set up Yavin 4 and how Ghorman really got going. We got to see the nuts and bolts of it last week, and now we get to see the kind of the fruits of everyone's labors for positive or for ill in this week. So I think from that respect, it really actually worked out pretty well, and I think that's generally why this was a good format to kind of approach and to do. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. Bix's character development, I see what you're saying. I guess, I was expecting her. I mean, it's good on her that she recovered, right? It feels like she's normal again, or at least as stable as she can be given all the trauma that she's had in her life. We'll get to that when we talk a little bit later about why she makes the decision that she does. But then the other one was like Wilmon, with the whole rhodium, what was it, the rhodium stuff that he was sniffing. I thought we were going to see something as a result of that. And maybe we did it. Maybe we did. It's hard to tell,
Yeah, you're right. That one was it was a very 180 from where we kind of left him. Yeah.
And it could still, I mean, we've got 3 more episodes left, right? So it could come back and manifest later and kind of pick up that storyline at some point. So I don't want to call that as kind of a fail by any means, but it was just where we left off in that really powerful speech that, Saw Gerrera was given, and you saw Wilmon just suddenly join in on that frenzy of snorting stuff, right? I just was thinking, okay, we're going to see something as a result of that. And we didn't technically see that here. There could have been some time that had passed. Again, maybe it resurfaces a little bit later. Syril's relationship with the Ghorman was kind of weird too, at least the Ghorman resistance. At one point when we left off, they were really trusting of him. They were looking at him as, being kind of this ally. And then we get into this episode and he's not. He's kind of there's almost a level of mistrust there, or distrust with him. And so I'm not really sure what the context is there. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but all I'm saying is I want to call this out because I think when we talked about this, when they went to the format of year after year, we were wondering if some of this stuff would feel kind of weird, that we were suddenly jumping and relationships were changing and we didn't have that context. All that to say, this is still, in my opinion, some of the best Star Wars, if not the best Star Wars that we've had. I know at times it cannot feel like Star Wars, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, right? I mean,
it fits the story very, very well. I mean, the tone of all of these episodes is very consistent, I think, in that way. We had some tonal questions early on, but they were serving a purpose. But you're right. While it may not feel like Star Wars lightsabers and force pushes and everything else, it's a different flavor of Star Wars for sure.
No, and I'm not going to beat the dead horse that we beat here about there's all kinds of different Star Wars fans out there. And this was a long time coming that we would, as fans of this type of storytelling, would eventually get when Disney purchased them. I'm absolutely in for this. I could do you could give me 10 seasons of this and I would love it. Absolutely love it. And it feels like Star Wars to me. I guess I want to make that very clear. I'm not going into the series thinking, oh, this isn't Star Wars. It absolutely is. It's just a different type of storytelling within that Star Wars universe that I'm not used to seeing, but I'm absolutely loving it. And like you said, episode 8 was incredible. I thought 9 did an incredible job as well. We got the Mon Mothma speech that we were kind of hoping for. Yeah. If Jenna O'Reilly doesn't get nominated for this series, like this season, that feels like a travesty, honestly. There's just so much she's doing with great material, don't get me wrong, but she's doing so much with her acting, all the physical stuff, the stuff that she's doing just, for physical, like faces and her expressions and the way she's just turning things on and off. I mean, it's just a freaking masterclass in acting. So couldn't be happier that she's, leading that whole Mon Mothma thing. I mean, everybody's perspectives have changed on Mon Mothma. You know what I mean? Like it's night and day different, even from where we were. I mean, it feels like every year, every time we get some new content with her, it feels like, oh, okay, that's cool. We learn a little bit more. But this series in particular, and maybe this season, maybe this arc in particular, has really, really defined and given us a good understanding of who Mon Mothma is and why she is so important by the time we get to Return of the Jedi and, of course, anything else after that. But
yeah, I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts towards a little bit later on about how they handled Rebels and how they kind of explained the difference of this speech from what we saw in Rebels. And there was an article, I think, on Entertainment Weekly as well that talked a little bit about this too. So I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that and generally how you feel about it, if it changes kind of how you feel about Rebels at all.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's jump into it. The way we're going to break this one down is we'll get into the Cassian and Bix arc. We'll break right before the massacre on that one. Then we'll get into Dedra and Syril, talk about what's going on in their worlds. And then we'll bring it all together with the massacre and then wrap up with all the post stuff, which is going to take us to with Mon Mothma leading all the way into back on Yavin and K2SO, of course. So, all right. And by the way, this might be a little bit of a longer episode. There's just so much content here and there's a lot of talking points. I was trying to like be selective on some of this stuff, but it's just, you know, when you have good writing and there's so much going on screen and through the dialogue that it's hard not to be like, oh, I just want to fanboy and kind of discuss it. So I promise I'll try to keep this under 4 hours. Okay. So we start with Cassian and Bix, and that opening shot was so awesome. Like I know it's short and I know there's really not a lot to it, but just seeing Yavin, there's something about the music, which by the way, I had this in my opening like thoughts, talking points. The music in these 3 arcs in particular was off the charts. Like it was absolutely, there was some level of synchronicity that was happening between what was going on screen and that music throughout every one of these arcs at different times. And even this just one moment when that shuttle comes in, it's being escorted by those 2 X-Wings. There's just something really hopeful and powerful and inspiring just from that like 5-second segment of them coming in, but seeing them land on that base, seeing them land on Yavin was absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. I love that little opening shot they gave us at the beginning there.
You know, you mentioned music, and I think episode 8 was probably some of the best overall scoring and sound design and music elements I've probably heard anything in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Without question. It's
I
so
agree.
weird. Like the way they did it, like they gave themes to things that don't have themes. I mean, and like it made, there's just so much about episode 8 we could talk about, but I think hands down, probably the best music we've had in many media period in probably the last decade. It was really impressive.
Yeah. And we're only like 24 hours since this whole arc aired. And so I think in subsequent viewings and as people start to discuss it more, I think
it got better. I've watched it twice and it got better.
It gets better. And I think things like this, like the music and the cinematography, a lot of that stuff is getting overlooked because we had such powerful moments, right? And once we take a step back and we start looking at this and evaluating it from a technical perspective, we're going to find even more and more things about this arc and these 3 episodes that were just, again, masterclass type storytelling stuff. But Willimon returns. He's the first one that gets off that shuttle. We're not sure where he's been. We'll find out here in a little bit later. I love seeing all those scenes with the base, right? Because, I mean, that whole base has always been such a mystery for us for so long. It was at least during the 90s and even the 2000s. And we've gotten some more stuff as legends continue to go on. And with Andor, that was exciting to kind of see that. Or not, sorry, with Rogue One, that was really exciting to see it. But
right.
I love the fact that we got to see the base and the Masasi temples and a little bit more there. But
this is where it's important to see that progression too. I mean, you see instantaneously, like not just where Bix and Cassian live, but which is interesting. They're kind of on the outskirts, right? So synonymous with him still wanting to have that barrier in place. But when you look at everything else, I mean, they've got a system working. It's not perfect yet, but you could see things working in concert with one another. You can see things getting organized. You can see folks like General Draven trying to instill discipline, right? And Vel talks about that a little bit later on too, I think in episode 9, but you just kind of feel the difference, right? I think this was really cool to be able to see. And I'm with you. I think to kind of see where it was just 2 weeks ago, or 2 years ago, right? But
right.
And then see what kind of progress they can make is really kind of neat. It's cool to see how quickly things can come together once you all start working, together in a common direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly a sign of things to come. And I forget who it is, but someone makes mention of that. They say that there's more structure and more organization that's starting to happen. So we're starting to see it all kind of come together right before our eyes. Cassian goes back to that retreat, and it's there that we learn that he's got some kind of a shoulder wound that he's been nursing. Doesn't seem to be getting any better. This becomes important a little bit later on. Woolman shows up, and they immediately start questioning. Like, Bix seems to be the much more caring and understanding kind of person, whereas Andor is a little bit more skeptical of where Woolman's been. Andor, we learned that Andor eventually that he's not really been tagged with Luthen very much at all here recently, but yet Woolman has been. He's been out doing kind of Luthen's dirty work. And so Cassian's a little bit suspicious about what he's doing. Is he really, I think it's a lot of it is because he doesn't want to be part of that anymore, right? Cassian doesn't want to be part of it. He wants to feel like he's making his own decisions. And for the most part, he has been kind of doing everything that Luthen has asked him to do. This becomes a discussion point, kind of a more pivotal conversation a little bit later.
You feel that tension, right, with pretty much anything Luthen with Cassian.
Yeah.
Like Luthen's really not present through these 3 episodes a whole lot until kind of the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually this season, he's been less visible, I think, in many ways. And I think intentionally. And I think that's interesting because you feel like Luthen's kind of on the outs. He's settled the stuff in motion. He's still kind of lighting fuses where he needs to and putting people in the right place and kind of the chess player behind the scene. But his influence is starting to get beyond his influence. And I think we even start to get a feel for some of that too, especially with how he talked to Mon Mothma much later on. But it's interesting to see Luthen's role kind of shifting and changing throughout these episodes without him even being present.
The one thing that struck me too is that you do pick up that Woolman is he's very defensive of Luthen, right? I mean, he was basically defending him and saying, look, he gets results. He's getting stuff done. He's doing things. Whereas these guys, the rebels, they're still kind of getting together. They're putting infrastructure together, right? He probably doesn't feel like they're actually making any changes, where that's not what he's feeling with Luthen, right? So it's interesting that he was kind of defending him. He mentions that he's fighting versus winning, right? I think is the word that he uses there. Yeah,
we kind of always equated that with like Saw Gerrera versus Mon Mothma's way of doing things and what they were doing on Yavin. But you clearly see more, like, Luthen's kind of in that middle area between Saw Gerrera and the rebellion, like what we would view as the rebellion. But you could definitely see where he leans a bit more towards Saw Gerrera's kind of methods and tactics without going to the absolute extreme of it. But he won't hesitate to if it's really required to do it. But it's not what he goes in kind of expecting to do each time.
Yeah. We also learned that Luthen wants Cassian to go assassinate Dedra. Now, Dedra, I did not see this coming, of course. I mean, how would we have known? But when that happened on the screen, the first time I watched it, I went, oh my God, is this how Dedra's going to go? Like, he's going to assassinate her? Because, we learned in Rogue One that he's kind of like this, he's got an assassin type, profile or whatever. He's out there shooting people. But yeah, that was kind of an oh crap moment for me. And they talk about how she's kind of the real monster in all of this, that, look, she's been after you ever since Ferrix, and, she's been tracking you. And this is enough to get Cassian at least interested and be like, okay, yeah, right. Like, this is almost similar to, hey, if we just take Dooku out, the Clone Wars will stop, kind of thing. It doesn't really stop anything, but he'll probably feel better about it, given that everything he's been through with her already.
Well, and they know better. That's the funny part. They know she's not the head of the monster, and and they know that she, killing her won't really do anything. So it's all personal vengeance at this point for everything they've done. And I loved how they kept leaning into that, right? For Ferrix and Stone and Sky, and every time they parted or saw each other, they would say it and remind themselves of why they're there and what their mission is to accomplish. So in memory of all of the fallen and everything that's happened, since then.
And from there, we get probably one of the more interesting moments. This is the Force healer scenes, right? So Bix and Cassian
was not expecting this at all, by the way.
I want to get your thoughts, because I know you've been pretty much, I wouldn't say against the Force being entered into this series, but
it didn't seem like it was relevant for the series. But this is curious.
Okay, so I want your thoughts on that, because I have a theory, but we'll get to that here in a few minutes. So Bix takes Cassian to go see a Force healer. Of course, he thinks it's a scam. He brings up Marva hating Force healers and all that. That was kind of funny. Right. Started thinking, I wonder what happened with that. And while they're talking and all that, suddenly you see that Force healer take note of Cassian, even though they're, off in a distance. She walks over to him, and you realize there's something going on between, she's being drawn to Cassian for some reason, right? At first, she thinks she recognizes him, then realizes that she doesn't. She knows that his shoulder, he's got a problem with his shoulder. And after she kind of force heals it, she says thank you to Cassian. There is a moment too. I promise I'm not going to indulge myself or 2 or 3 of our viewers, but there is a moment when she's talking to Bix. Do you know where I'm going with this?
No, go.
And she touches like near her belly. Like, is Bix pregnant? But okay, that's all I'm going to say. I won't. We'll do a whole breakdown.
I'm
of
glad
this.
you didn't go there, Albert.
We're going to do a breakdown of this later. But no, seriously. After he says thank you, she says the clarity, that feeling. It's been a very long time. I thought it was gone for good. It's so easy to lose faith, but they come no matter what. Sometimes it even works. But this, all your gatherings, the strength of spirit. Surely you must feel it. And then she goes on to call him the messenger. Right. So now we're getting into this real kind of like, force stuff.
Well, it's
destiny, cosmic force
stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Religious stuff. And then she goes on to say, I sense the weight of things I can't see, pain, fear, need. Most beings carry the things that shaped them. They carry the past, but some, very few, your pilot, they're gathering as they go. She's talking to, of course, Bix at this point. There's a purpose to it. He's a messenger. There's some place he needs to be. And then maybe you're the place he needs to be. She's talking to Bix at that point, and that's when she grabs the Force healer's hand, or that's when they kind of touch. And I was like, oh, it's a little close to the belly, but okay. So did this feel out of place for you? Because a lot of people have been really throwing the praise at the series of saying, look, this is a clear indication that we don't necessarily have to get into the Force or lightsabers or Jedi or Sith or light versus dark, at least not at the, the Force level kind of stuff. This is a clear, introduction of the Force. It's subtle in a lot of ways, but I do have a theory as to like why it's important. But I guess wanted your thoughts first on it.
So is it out of place? I mean, no. I mean, it's the rebellion being open to. It's kind of like Bail Organa, right? It's remembering what was right and good about the galaxy at some other point. It doesn't necessarily have to lean into the Jedi, but that they're open and welcoming of a Force user, and that they believe in that type of thing shouldn't be a surprise whatsoever, right? I mean, it should be kind of obvious. And that I like how subtle it was, though. It was very subdued. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't too much. And again, and I don't know if this is where you're going, but the point of the scene isn't necessarily to question Cassian's faith or lay things out, but it's really to show Bix that, like, to give her that clarity of purpose of in some ways of saying Cassian's meant to do something. But in order for him to accomplish that, Bix takes it this way, at least. You can't be the one. Like, if you're still here, you're going to limit what Cassian's able to do and what he's really meant to do. He can't accomplish what he needs to if he's constantly focusing on you and you're the person that he wants to be with, when he needs to be in this moment at some point, and that doesn't include you, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, that's where she took it. And I think that's kind of the point of the scene, to give her that clarity. So while the Force healer is saying that she got clarity, I think for Bix, it was her moment of clarity too, that she's in a way holding him back from what he is truly needed to do. And even Luthen says something kind of similar when he's ranting off about it, that he's always where he needs to be. Is it lucky? Is it fate? Is it destiny? Those types of vibes start to come across from Luthen in that moment. And they're kind of echoed from this moment in episode 7. Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. That was my take on it. He does, Cassian talks about how all he has is luck, right? He's just been a very lucky person. I always go back to, in my experience, there's no such thing as luck. So I'm not saying that Cassian's Force sensitive. I've seen some people start going down that route, and I can see how easy it is to get there.
No, that's Syril Karn.
Okay.
Syril Karn is Force sensitive.
We'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that this is the cosmic force intervening, right? There's a purpose here. There's a greater purpose that's being called upon. And people like Andor and, of course, Luke and Anakin and everybody else that plays a part in this to kind of bring down the dark side, they all have a role in this. And it's just the cosmic force, talking about it. But I agree 100% with you. Like, this really is about Bix. It's the moment that she realizes, and the moment that we realize that when she hears these types of things, she takes it to heart. Right? Like, she realizes that there's a purpose here. It's, in some ways, it's similar to Shmi Skywalker allowing Anakin to leave, right? Because she knows that's really the best thing for him, even though that's probably tearing at her heart. She had to make that decision. It was a little bit easier because, you know, he was a slave. But for Bix, it was that same thing at the very end, right? She decided that she was going to make this. Now, never in her wildest dreams did she ever think that they would never reunite at some point, and that's what probably made it a little bit easier. But this really kind of spooks her out. And maybe you could use spook, or maybe it opened her eyes, but she realizes, like you said, that I'm the one that's probably holding him back from his true potential. If there is indeed a message that's out there and he's constantly tethered to me and all he wants to do is be with me, he's never going to fulfill that greater purpose that this greater calling is making of him, or the Force is making of him, or whatever destiny is asking of him. So she does let him go. So that's why this is important. I know it's fun to entertain the whole Force healer discussion and whether the Force needed to be introduced into this, but that's really not what this was about. It was just simply about Bix's coming to that decision a little bit later on, and this kind of made it a lot easier for her to make that decision.
Yeah, it's interesting that people are looking at Cassian as Force sensitive when really I think it should be looked at Bix anyway.
Yeah, you could see that too.
I mean, because she's the one saying, "No, I've felt something.
Right.
Like this feels right. Like I've sensed something." And again, it's nebulous. The Force is in everything and everybody, right? So that she has some sort of feeling doesn't mean that she's going to be out there and become, you know, the next Sabine Wren or something. But I think it's you could still have intuition of sorts that is kind of granted to you by the Force, and just as a latent, you don't even know. So I think it still worked. I thought they handled this really, really well for introducing the Force, kind of in finger quotes, but not letting it get too serious, and definitely didn't redirect the intent of this scene like at all. So I thought this was actually pretty well crafted. Very surprising, because I think even in the final hype, we may have asked this question if we would see the Force and things like that. We were like, no, hard no. Mm-hmm. And, you know, here we are in a very limited quantity, but I think expertly kind of introduced and very subtly works really well.
Yeah, and I think all of this kind of gets hammered down for us in the next scene when she goes back to the, you know, the hut or whatever they're living in. And suddenly you can already see that his shoulder's feeling better. It's already healing. So whatever the Force healer did is working. We get the sense that she definitely believes the Force healer. She believes that what she did. She believes in the things that she said. You know, Cassian is saying, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And, you know, she goes on to say that, you know, she could sense it, right? She says that, and she's not afraid to say it. She's not going to hide it. There was something there that she was feeling, and that she's felt it before, that she's had dreams about it before. So to your point earlier, like, you know, is she Force sensitive? I don't think that's what they were trying to do here, but if anybody's going to make a strong case for it, this scene in particular and the things that she's saying, especially with that last part of it, let it in, it can only be good, there's no other reason. That's like essentially saying, open yourself up to the Force, right? How many times have you heard that from masters telling their Padawans that?
Yeah, these are your first steps, right?
These are your first steps, Cass. So, all right, we're not going to belabor that anymore. So we get to the next day, and this is where Cassian has made the decision that him and Wilmot are going to head out to go find Dedra and assassinate her. I like this fact that General Draven gets after him, right? Because, you know, he says, look, those who enjoy the security of Yavin must proclaim their loyalties, because this guy's kind of coming and going as he wants. It's like you said earlier, he's part of the rebels, but he's not really ready to go ahead and just say, I'm all in with him and follow all the rules and regulations. He still wants that kind of that freedom and agency to be able to go and do whatever he wants. This doesn't sit well with Draven and those guys, because, you know, they're trying to get people in line. They're trying to bring order to this group.
They need discipline, and they need people like Cassian who can lead this crew, and they want to lead the crew. They see the things that he can do. They need him to lead by example, and he's still on the outskirts. He's still not really drank the Kool-Aid quite yet.
Yeah. It was, you know, some might call him a rogue, to coin a phrase, but they end up heading to Ghorman in the U-Wing, which they didn't spend a whole lot of time on. I thought they would. I love that ship design, but it was cool to finally see it, even though it was kind of tiny most of the time you saw it. And then after they get there, we get Vel's visit to Bix, and we learn that it's been a while since they've seen each other in that last year that's passed now. You know, Vel said that she needed to calm down. She's not doing the Luthen stuff anymore. She's kind of all in on this rebel group that's sitting there on Yavin, and that she was starting to get reckless. And what she's kind of hinting at is that that's where Cassian is going, at least in the eyes of like Dodonna and Draven. They feel like he is getting reckless, and he's, you know, going to get himself killed, when really what they need right now are leaders, right? They're so young that they need people like Cassian that have been doing this for so long, that are very trustworthy, people they can count on, people that have maybe weren't natural leaders at first, but have grown into that into that role. And so, they want him to stick around and not kind of run off and do the things that he's been doing. That line that she tells him about, he will be there when you need him.
Yeah.
That line is so powerful. And I know not a lot of people are talking about it, but when you think about it, he's been there for everybody when they've needed him, but that really is kind of hinting about all the events that happen in Rogue One, later down the road. So it's just beautiful writing.
Yeah. And it's nice to see Vel kind of make an appearance. Again, this is another character I was hoping we'd see a little bit more from. We'll see where the character ends up at the end of the day on the last arc. But yeah, it was good to, I think, acknowledge that. Again, she's getting reckless probably because of some level of grief as well, right? Losing Cinta, knowing that she probably thrust herself into just going all out. And again, when you just go crazy like that, you're just trying to distract yourself from it. And she finally got to a place where she's like, yeah, where can I do the most good? That lifestyle isn't working for me, and it hasn't worked for me for a long time. And there's something better here where I could feel I could still make a difference, still contribute, and like actually, truly organize this thing into something that has a true chance rather than more guerrilla type of tactics like what we were doing initially on Ghorman and those types of scenarios. So something that's sustainable, something that actually has meaning and has a true hope, of making a difference in the long run. And
yeah,
Vel's kind of finally got there off screen, but which was a little disappointing, but she's kind of there, which is nice to see.
Yeah. They arrive on Ghorman and check into the hotel, right? He's got this identity of Ronnie Goja from Mid-Rim News. We talked about the bellhop episode scene last week, right? And we were going about like, what was the scene, and I wasn't expecting this. I love the fact that scene is not I don't think anything has been a throwaway, honestly, in this series, especially this season, given how condensed everything is. But I love the fact that this now has a lot more purpose to it, right? Because of what's going to happen with that bellhop, which I forgot to get his name. Did you catch his name? I think it was in the audio descriptions or something, but we're just going to call him the bellhop. But Cassian heads over into his room. Of course, he recognizes him. The bellhop recognizes him for having been there just last year. We never get any kind of sense that they're, working together. They know each other, but he knows, because he's on the Ghorman Resistance now, he's working for them. He probably knows who Cassian is at least. But anyways, he heads to his hotel room. He checks in with Wilmon.
I think he just remembered him from last time.
Maybe that's it. It could be.
He came in under a different name. You start to recognize some of the old tricks of the trade. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Sure, Mr. Ronnie Goja, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Varian Sky. Which one are you? You don't look like an art dealer now.
Checks in with Wilmon. He sees that there's stormtroopers above him. That kind of throws a wrench in everything because they're everywhere. So anyways, he goes to bed trying to think of a new plan. All right, we're going to stop there because the next day is when the Ghorman massacre fires up. So let's cut over now let's get caught up with Dedra and Syril. Syril's visit is what we'll start with. So, this is like the opening scene of the first episode here in this arc. There's all the news that's going on. Those people are talking about how there's been all these, skirmishes that are happening. The full propaganda machine is an absolute effect right now. And it's just really cool to kind of see what has happened over that last year. And I guess the scenario or the situation or, that they're kind of creating with the Ghormans, which is really just this kind of pressure cooker that's been brewing now for over a year and it's about to bust. But yeah, lots of skirmishes. There's local terrorist groups, quote, terrorist groups that have been churned up. We've got a city curfew now in effect. The Empire's building is completely built and erected. But when he goes into that office and he's talking to, was it Grimeson or whatever that guy's name was? It felt like he had a little bit more authority. You know what I mean? Like in that last year, he's got a little bit more clout with the Empire. He felt like he was a lackey, especially when they kind of stormed his office and we were, doing the searching. And some of that was probably, it
was an act.
It was an act. But it did feel like he had a lot more control and presence. And Dedra talks a little bit about this later on about the promotions, right? So he's done well for himself. What really sucks, and we'll get to this at the very end of when we talk to unfortunately his leaving, is he never changes his character. Like he's been very consistent about feeling like he is the good guy and he is doing what's good. And we talked about this, I think, in the first arc and even maybe the second arc, where I said when he finds out that he's been played and been lied to, it's going to be, his whole world's going to come crashing down. And we clearly saw that happen. But the fact that he has a little bit more clout here was kind of nice. So before we get into the Partagas thing, anything you want to say about Syril or I guess what's been happening on Ghorman in that last year now?
No, I think we should probably just keep going because I think it's all gonna come out probably within that context.
So we get to the conversation now between Partagaz and Dedra Morrow talking about, the Emperor has taken a great interest in the situation. We learn that, the worst case scenario that they talked about back when they had that first powwow meeting with the video about what Ghorman was, that they've tried to make the synthetic crystals or minerals. None of that has worked. And so the only recourse they have left for their quote energy program is to go ahead and mine the hell out of Ghorman and take those minerals, which we learned was going to eventually just make the whole planet blow up. Right.
Partagaz's like, well, I don't know, speech to Dedra was almost laughably amusing too. Like we gave the Ghormans their chance. Right. And this kind of goes back to your comment. We're all the heroes of our own story, effectively.
Yeah.
For Syril, but it was also like Partagaz of like, hey, look, we tried. Like, we have records. We have all the records of like, all the things that we've done that tried to avoid this inevitable scenario where we knew they wouldn't actually go through with any of this stuff. But they're just so blind. The Ghormans just have no idea, though, like what's happening, aside from like just being stepped on and the oppressive nature of the Empire. But
yeah,
it's always amusing when the Empire just tells you how it's like a classic narcissist in that way, right?
Yes.
You're constantly gaslighting them, but at the end of the day, you're absolutely doing the things that you're trying to say that you're not doing.
Yeah.
And it's really their fault for doing it. But you're right, the propaganda machine is all over the place. These episodes, it was almost difficult to tell what, like, and intentionally so, like what's actually real, like what storyline or what, this bombing or that this event or these terrorists or the Empire. You couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. But at the end of the day, the message that was getting broadcast across to the galaxy from the news networks was one of effectively what was going to become this huge martyrdom, for the Empire, of everything the Empire was doing well. And you hear verbatim the news reporter repeating what Partagaz said just a couple of scenes before, too, of how embedded that material, that propaganda machine is working for the Empire with the media.
Yeah, and it was hard to, I couldn't tell. They never said what news agencies they were. Later on, we learned that there's the Imperial news agencies are out there as well. So we could be hearing those feeds, which, they're probably just getting their talking points directly from the ISB, right? So that certainly tracks. But that line of it's bad luck for Ghorman, that's just like terrible. Like, wow, really? That's all he had for them. But yeah, we learned that in 48 hours, the Armada is going to show up. They're going to start the mining almost immediately. And then he calls it martial domain, which I thought was an interesting choice. And rather than martial law, it's martial domain. Like, we're just taking over your planet. Yeah. This never came up. And it just as an aside, but I was like, don't they have like any local authorities on here? Because even like Morlana 1 had local authorities and other planets do. And I'm sure there's probably some canon reason explanation as to why they didn't. But we never saw any kind of local authority step up or be like, hey, no, this isn't part of your jurisdiction. How dare you come in here and just set up a base right here? And then suddenly you start, instating curfews and, whatever else they were doing. But
yeah, I would imagine even if they did, it was probably something less than stellar regardless. I mean, it's a textile planet for the most part, right?
Sure.
They're making things and they probably have some low level crime and everything, but it seems like they have a huge sense of community as well. So I think that's the intent, though. And even if the Empire showed up and there was one, they probably subdued that and supplanted it pretty quick. And jurisdiction is just funny to the Empire. Like, that's cute. Like, you're part of the Imperial Senate. You're part of, clearly they're part of that. Like, you're under our jurisdiction. So whatever you think your jurisdiction is, we supersede that regardless.
Yeah. Well, it says, to be fair, Carol was a city official. Yeah. They had a government. That was very clear.
Right, yeah.
But I was talking about like a military force or even just a police force, something that would kind of provide security resistance to this type of thing from happening. Now, they wouldn't have been able to keep the Empire out. And maybe that happened. I don't know. Maybe it did, and we just never saw it. It happened off screen. But
that's possible, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this a-hole Captain Kaido. This guy, I don't know who the actor was, but man, he just has that brilliant resting, face the entire time. So he was perfectly cast.
And when he cocked just a little grin, like it was just
during Ghorman's massacre,
it was just sick in the best kind of way. It was really really well done.
But Partagaz says that he's got a crisis specialist, and what he means
is
creating a crisis. Yeah. It's exactly right. Yeah. But he is, he's going to manage the situation. He's got personnel coming in, which are basically fodder I saw that coming a mile away.
Yeah.
And then Dedra starts getting animated and he calls her out on it, right? And he's kind of dangling this idea of, look, just hang around a little bit longer. There's a promotion for you. Again, they've been just dangling that carrot the entire time, it looks like, for about the last year now. And then when she mentions that, hey, they've got weapons, he's like, I hope they do. Like, that's exactly what we need. Everything's kind of falling into place here. That whole next scene here, though, where she meets her and Syril have that first confrontation, like a lot has changed in their relationship, right from where we left off. I do wonder now, especially too, like, okay, again, I don't want to stoke really weird, wacky conspiracy theories, but later on when he grabs Enza by the arm,
yeah, that was a little suspect, huh?
Yeah. See, I wasn't the only one that was picking up on that. Like, I was starting to think, like, okay, well, maybe they got a little bit closer than they would. That relationship felt weird. And I wonder if, as he was pulling away from Dedra, she's the stable thing and she's got him all the promotions. He might feel obligated to stay there, but maybe it was Enza that was really the one that was kind of nurturing his heart, in the best ways. So I don't know. More maybe on that a little bit later, but he's suspicious of the fact that there's all these reports that are going around, and he's like us. He can't even tell. He can't keep it straight, like what's real and what's not. There's just tons and tons of rumors that are out there. And so he presses Dedra to tell him what he wants to hear, that she finally gives in before, she has to say the truth, before she tells the truth and says, yeah, there are outside agitators involved. Like, that's what he wants to hear, because that justifies the work that he's doing. It gives him purpose. The irony of all of this is that he actually becomes the outside agitator, right? He's the one that kind of starts a lot of this stuff later on, but I'll come back to here in a little bit. So it was great, but he's upset that he's not getting the intel, of course, that he has. He's questioning, what am I doing here? He doesn't know what they've been doing. And then to like distract him, to defer, to deflect, she suddenly just plants a kiss on him. Maybe the most awkward kiss ever in Star Wars, if not the world all time. But it was so there was nothing to that kiss. It was just to shut him up, give him what he wants so he can go away and not ask any more questions. But that whole last line to do what I told you to do. It's like, okay, well, she's still wearing the pants in her family, but that's not going to be the case for much longer here.
It's really interesting watching Dedra like throughout these three, because you see this, you get like three sides of Dedra. One moment you have this slightly uneasy with everything that's going on, and it's difficult to understand exactly what she's thinking, because she keeps reinforcing the idea of, I just got to get through it and everything's gonna be fine. But you could kind of tell, at least in my kind of how I feel about it, it kind of seems like she feels uneasy about the direction the Empire is going and what they're about to do. Like, she knows what's going to happen. They're going to intentionally incite this riot. And I don't even think she has a good grasp on exactly the scale of what this is going to look like. And then the absolute destruction of the planet, I think, doesn't sit well with her in some ways. But like you said, let me just champion on. I'm just going to, we're going to be out of here. We can go home. We'll go back to normal. We'll put this behind us. I can forget about this. I can leave it from my memory. I can just move forward and forget about it. Everything will be fine. And then when Syril wants to kind of challenge any of that, then she goes right back to, like you said, and just being the disciplinarian and the same mother-like figure that he's had in his life the entire time, where, no, you'll just do what I tell you to do and you'll like it. So it's interesting to get that characterization of Dedra. You just don't quite know how she's feeling. You see these moments of severe anxiety and fear, and I think it's a genuine care for Syril in some ways, but it's difficult to know how deep that care goes, or if she's just constantly fighting the need to be successful in her career and to move forward, because that's really what she feels the most passionate about. And Cyril's kind of a nice to have at this point, and hey, it keeps her from being lonely, type of thing. But what was your kind of take on Dedra's arc throughout these conversations with Syril? Yeah,
I don't know. I've always been, since the first episodes, maybe even since last season, I just felt like she's not genuine. And I'll come to Zoralen's comment here in just a second, and Wyatt's as well. But I haven't picked up that she's been genuine. It just feels like she's probably never, and this is my own personal characterization, I just feel like she's never had a relationship ever. And then suddenly she has this one person who's weirdly interested in her. And so she just kind of goes with it.
Right.
And through the course of that awkward courtship, she realizes that he could benefit her. and in trying to track down what she's really been after, her little white whale of Cassian Andor, right?
Right.
And so through that, she comes to be okay with it, like comes to understand, or maybe at least normalize what it means to be in this kind of weird relationship. That's why they have the thing of like turn off the lights, and the way they stand next to each other, but they don't look at each other, and they're kind of facing off in different directions. And for Syril, I have the same kind of thing. Like, I don't know that he's ever really had any kind of true relationship, and this is his first go around, and he's got somebody who's got power and is an authoritative figure, and that probably feels like comfortable to him because of Eedy and how she treated him his whole life. And so they're just there and kind of going through the motions, and it's working out for both. They're both getting something they want, but there's nothing really truly genuine or sincere about that relationship. And I think that's where all of this escalates, on top of everything else about the lies and all that stuff. But because they don't have that genuine connection, it's so fragile, and it explodes in the way it does a little bit later when it all kind of comes down. His whole world, I mean, he's completely devastated. He's completely, he's disgusted. He's been betrayed at every level, emotionally, physically, whatever you want to call it. And when he finds out that he's being used, and Dedra hasn't been given all that information, and she's known for a much longer time. So it's hard for me to feel like there's anything genuine about this relationship, and it's just there for mutual gain for both of them until they realize, like, okay, this is absolutely stupid. And that's why I feel like Enza probably was, being nice to him and being sincere to him, and showing him actual affection and love, and that they may have had a thing at some point. And that's why she slaps him, because, he goes right back to being insincere about the situation and saying, look, this is, I can't remember the line. I've got it written down here a little bit later, but there's something that triggers her to suddenly just slap somebody like Syril. There's probably some more there, baggage or some previous relationship.
Yeah, he was trying to spread the propaganda to give them an out, which wasn't true.
Yeah,
which is irony, of course. But I mean, yeah, it's the idea that Syril is desperate for respect, and Dedra continues to just kind of crap on that in many of these instances, especially later when he finds out it's all a lie. He already feels like something's not all adding up here anyway. Why are we fighting against this? Why are you standing in the way of the things I've been trying to do and accomplish? What, this doesn't make sense. And then when she just puts her authoritative figure, foot down, it's just, again, another point of like, why am I in this? Because she doesn't respect me whatsoever. And like you said, he's probably not quite ready at this point to admit that he's a tool of her success and that she's okay with using him. And of course, Denise Goff had said a little bit about this during a celebration, that that's the kind of person she is. So this behavior was very expected, and I think she delivered on it exactly as we would expect it to see. But interesting to kind of see where Syril takes all of this, and I can't wait till we talk about his final confrontation with Cassian about this too.
Just quickly, from Wyatt said, I also would like to see more of the tensions between Syril and the Ghormans, given more weight to Enza slapping Syril in the face. Yep, I mean, there's a lot that happened there, unfortunately, that we'll probably not know about, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems pretty clear though that they found out that he was definitely going to betray them and was feeding information, and probably had a falling out with them at some point. But
yeah,
that he's on the streets with them still senses that there's still some sort of camaraderie. Maybe not the right word, but it still seems like they were approachable to one another, even if they didn't necessarily respect one another anymore.
Yep. I lost the comments. There's another comment.
Rollins.
Yeah. Yeah. She was talking about Dedra. She says she just happens to be clueless as F and has zero experience with love, but she's trying in her own way. I mean, that's certainly possible. Again, that was just my reading of the situation. But all right, let's talk about the Ghorman resistance. I mean, they've formalized pretty much at this point. The bellhop is part of that Ghorman resistance. He's down there with the group. The Rylands is talking about how, look, I mean, Rylands is completely in on what's going on. He clearly sees what's happening. They're just being baited by the Empire. He wants peaceful resistance. You got the younger generation that's like, no, let's take it to them kind of thing. So, and he ends up losing. We get the first sense of that chant of "We are the Ghor." It's echoed here for the first time. And he's not wanting them to change. He doesn't want them to change who they are, right? He feels like if we go down this path, we are no longer the people that we said we would, or we say we are. All of that's sad, because it absolutely comes, worst nightmares come true later down the road here. We get finally to the scene here where Syril stops Enza in the hallway. He says he's trying to protect her. You get that sense in there. He talks about, wants to blame the outside agitators for the rising up and the organizing. That's when she slaps him. She walks away. and he's just stunned. He just stands there the entire time. So I don't know. It just feels like, again, not to beat a dead horse, but it feels like there's more going on here than what we see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point at the beginning of the show, this is where the gap is. It's interesting to leave untold stories and you see what the effects are and make you wonder. And I know why it's kind of asking questions about, could some of this fit maybe in books and comics in the future here that touches on some of these? And I think the answer is probably, yeah, there's probably a number of stories they could tell within some of that, but you're right. But also, do you have enough to understand it well enough for the show to continue? I think the answer is probably still yes. We have enough, but it does leave you wondering and asking questions. And they sometimes do feel a little less fulfilling because you're just curious, because it seems like, okay, we've taken a major turn, or at least a considerable turn here. It seems like it would be useful to have a little more information as to what happened, right? Without needing maybe an external party or Tony Gilroy to come in and tell you what happened and declassified or something like that,
Right.
which we don't really get either. But, so this is kind of where the year breaks do kind of work a little for you, but also against you in some ways. It's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off. Okay, let's get to the Ghorman massacre. So we're going to now go to the next day where everything kind of comes back together. Sergeant Bloy shows up and he's got his young recruits with him. You also get the sense here that Bloy, he's uncomfortable with his, quote, men being on Ghorman, and Captain Kaido senses it as well. I mean, this is all kind of playing into their plan. Dedra makes a comment of like, they look like children, because they did. I mean, they purposely picked those guys and they're all super young.
Yeah.
Dedra then calls Partagas, and we get confirmation that the mining rigs are starting to land everywhere. She's starting to get animated all again by everything. Partagas also confirms that the rumors and infractions are done. Like, we're done with rumors. We're done with all those infractions. It's time to just rip this planet apart and take what we need. We're the Empire, and we've got everything in place that we need in order to pull that off. We cut over quickly to Eedy, who's kind of watching the news, and she's concerned about her son. That I never thought I'd feel bad for her, but I was kind of devastated at the very end when she's watching the news there. And not to jump ahead, but that was kind of sad.
Tough. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, and then Syril is told that the comms are coming down and they needed to report over to the ISB building. So
Can only mean one thing, Albert.
Invasion.
That's right.
We need to put a list together of every time the comms go down and it's because of invasion, because it feels like every series this happens. So,
well, to be fair, even if it's not happening, you make it happen anyway. So.
We'll twist it enough to make it feel like that's exactly what happened.
You will make it legal.
All right, let's get to the plaza gathering that's starting to happen. We've got demonstrations that are popping up everywhere. These people are starting to coalesce through the streets, making their way over into.
Well, the Empire baits them, right? So the Empire, So early on in the episode, they have the memorial ring fenced with their barriers, and it's a really tight circle around it. And then all of a sudden, they start moving it all out, and they start to open the plaza, which of course just invites people, saying this is our opportunity to come and truly protest. And the Empire is just totally saying, like, yeah, sure, come on in.
Yeah, and it's the way structurally that thing, it literally was a barrel. You know what I mean? Like shooting fish in a barrel or a fishbowl or whatever.
It's a kill zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they made it. And they said they were barricading. It's like, what are they barricading? Like, they were barricading where the Empire was at just for their part of it. But when they brought the stormtroopers in to kind of close the zone off, there's no escape.
They just packed them in there.
Little escape. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get to that too, because there's some really great stuff that's happening to kind of just ramp up the tensions, of course in the story, but then for us as an audience as well. All of that happening is really fun. We get Rylands, he confronts Syril there in the streets. He thinks that Syril was in on this from the beginning, and you can see like Cyril's face is genuinely like, "What are you talking about? Like I'm just as lost as you are here. Like I've been lied to essentially." But he's Rylands is absolutely disgusted with him. This plays out a little bit later, and unfortunately, why Syril goes. But Syril tells him, "Look, I didn't mean any harm to you guys. This is not exactly what I thought was going to be happening." He brings up the rigs and all that, and Syril still thinks this is a rumor, of course. And then he asks the question of him of what kind of being are you? Which really stuns him again. Like Cyril's character here and his development and just the things that he's going through, you can see where it all leads to him just being absolutely dumbfounded, shell-shocked, lost, standing amidst all the chaos because his whole world, again, has just completely come crashing down everywhere around him.
Yeah, I mean, you could say he's an unwitting pawn, but at the same time, Syril was definitely there to do all of these things. So it's he didn't have the whole story, and maybe he would have thought differently of it, but I have a feeling he probably still would have gone along with a lot of this stuff too. So it's one of those things where he can feel in the dark and be upset about it, but at the same time, he knew he was infiltrating and learning more about this underground movement and doing things that would incite them in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So he can claim ignorance and some of that stuff, and to an extent, exactly that's true. But he's a part of the evil machine, whether he likes it or not, and he's wanted to be a part of it for a very long time.
Yeah. Before Cassian heads out there, he does have that kind of he has that one last discussion with the bellhop there, and we get the line of rebellions are built on hope.
Unexpected.
That was unexpected, and I like the fact that that's what sparked it all for him. And he's going to repeat this a little bit later, right? I want to go to something Ellen said earlier, because I did flag it. She said, just a little headcanon I have for the bellhop, because I noticed that most people are saying he originated the quote, rebellions are built on hope. She goes on to say, but I like the idea that his father told him that just before he got squashed by Tarkin's ship in the original massacre. I like that too. Yeah, maybe that was just something that was passed on. But nonetheless, this was what really, I saw somebody post something about this guy single-handedly brought down the Empire. This bellhop single-handedly brought the Empire down with his quote or something like that. I was like, yeah, that's true. He did do that. Because that's how I roll. But let's see, where are we? Yeah, and so, Cassian goes out there. Things are starting to ramp up. We got people walking around, yelling. They're starting to chant. Everyone's, starting to coalesce again down there in the plaza. We got a moment there where Syril walks by Cassian and Andor, which I was like, oh, that would have been weird if they would have actually, seen each other. But the one thing that I really liked while this is all happening that really just kind of built up the tension was those flybys by the TIE fighters, right? They were coming in so low and everybody was jumping and getting down. Like it was just ramping up that tension. And that's a lot, that along with everything else, with the barricades going up. And then, I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but like the people coming out with the riot gear, it was just an escalation after escalation, and things were really starting to get really hot and awful. But those TIE fighters buzzing them was certainly adding to a lot of that.
Yeah, it's just that constant reminder of like, hey, we have superiority over you too, right? And it was really cool the way they did it too, because everything got quiet. People ducked, people got silent, and you had that moment, and then it started to ramp back up. But every time they did it, you just sense that foreboding, like they have something special and extra that they have over you, and everybody has to recognize that superiority.
Yeah. Syril goes into the ISB building. This is where he goes and says, he makes his way in there, says he needs to get upstairs. They escort him in. I guess he runs into Grimish or whatever that guy's name was, and they take him over to where they've got other civil servants along with the KT or the KV or a KX unit, that are sitting down there. That one that's looking at him prolonged, I think, was supposed to be, K2SO, but
I guess we'll talk about K2SO here shortly, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't know. They didn't go the route that we kind of thought we would. With
no,
K2SO.
not at all.
Yeah, so we'll have to debate whether or not that's him or not. But at this point, it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right. Kaido steps in. This is where he orders like all the plaza to be closed up. The stormtroopers start pushing everybody down. So they essentially blocked off all the exits. You've got Cassian, who's completely focused on Dedra. There was a couple times in here where he was about to take a shot and something happened. He had to suddenly back off. You've got Wilmon, who's running around looking for Andor at this point. And then when Kaido orders the patrols to go in the middle of it all, and I was like, holy crap, that's exactly what they don't need to do. Because they're just, this is, again, it was a pressure cooker. All that was going to start just really was going to boil at that point. But you've got Lazine in there, Dylan, Enza, Draina's now there. You've got Tazzy. I think it's Lazine who starts getting everybody to sing, which I thought was...
This was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Like you were reminded it's not just a demonstration and a riot about to break out. It's also about like what they're saying, like we're the Gore, the galaxy, all of that. It's really about their national anthem and who they are and what they represent and that pride that they have and that they stand as a unified front and just a community. And that's what they all have in common. And that's what's unique about Ghorman, compared to other places in the galaxy and compared to what the Empire wants to do and drive wedges. And again, when Luthen says it will, it will burn very brightly, that type of thing is what gets on, presumably those are the things you would want to be on the news, right? They're singing in protest. It's not just the bloodshed that happens and then the atrocities. It's what were the moments leading up to it. And who knows if that actually made the news in the galaxy far, far away. But, it's interesting to have that because as viewers, we see that and sense that. And it's just kind of a beautiful moment of unity before everything just completely falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole language they created was pretty remarkable, quite honestly.
It's pretty incredible.
I think
What's
it was in the
interesting is behind the scenes, like the actors started speaking to each other in that language too. They just out of natural and just out of fun, I think too. It's really curious that they adopted it as their on-set language in some ways too.
So one of the more shocking scenes, I think, in this episode, or at least in the arc, was when Syril makes his way up to the top and he confronts Dedra. And this is where it all kind of comes to head here. He throws a couple questions out there. He says, "What have you done? Why are we doing? What are we doing here? How long have you known about this? How long?" Dedra's face when he grabs her and like shakes her, like you can see the fear in her eyes. Like, holy crap, who is this person? Like, he probably has never done that before. Well,
and then wrapping his hands around her throat, like I was like, "Whoa, we are going here." I guess.
Yeah,
this was really unexpected to see this severe. It's all the things that have been pent up for Syril, and I'm not defending the guy whatsoever of strangling anybody, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, this is like for all of that to kind of happen, and then now you see what's going on, and Cyril's finally kind of put it together and knows he's been betrayed, and it's by the person that he's put so much faith and confidence in, and feels and recognizes that she has just been absolutely using him for no other reason except her own advancement, and then for her to throw it back in his face, like, you didn't seem to mind the advancements. You didn't seem to mind the promotions and the nice room and everything else that's been going on, and us turning out the lights every once in a while. Didn't seem to bother you whatsoever, but now it's a problem. Like, grow up is how I would interpret that. He heard some of those messages and he's like, it just snapped, and he's a loose cannon. We kind of knew that fuse was there at some point, but it was surprising. It was so like, it was approaching that level of violence at all.
Yeah. I mean, he even threatens to like throw her out the building, out the window at one point.
And I kind of think he probably would have.
Yeah.
He may have felt bad about it later, but I think he definitely would have.
Yeah. I mean, it was sad. And then his last words are, good luck, Dedra. He's again feeling betrayed. He's been lied to. He's been used. He's been played. There's nothing about, again, if how I interpret their relationship on top of all that, they've got this hollow relationship that they've had for so long that he might have been, hoping for something to eventually turn into something more than what it was. But yeah, just a number of bad events there. So let's go to where Dedra finally makes the call. I think we said this based on the trailer that she would be the one that kind of pulls the trigger. Yeah. I didn't realize, I forget the line now, but at some point when Cairo's talking to her, or was it Cairo? Sorry. The captain, Kaido. That's it. Yeah. Captain Kaido. The alliteration there is funny. But Captain Kaido, when he tells her, like, I'm the trigger, you're the finger, whatever the hell it was. Yeah. That was a nice little good analogy. But nonetheless, she makes the order to go ahead and proceed. They've got the sniper up there. When I saw the sniper, I'm like, he's not going to shoot the people. He's going to shoot one of the poor dudes. Certainly that was what happened, because that's exactly what, you'd want to do to get everything incited the way it did. So all hell breaks loose. The massacre starts at that point. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in here, but I know you want to talk about some of the, I guess, what were some of the things that stood out? We can talk about the music here, because I think this is where it was really, really powerful, and it just changed a number of times as we were watching. But there was so much going on here. It just felt absolutely chaotic in the best ways, and I was just riveted. I mean, I was completely, staring at my screen, dumbfounded. I felt like Syril Karn, quite honestly, with everything that was going on.
He's got the Force with him, right? He's like Chirrut. All of a sudden, can't get hit by anything.
Hit.
You know what I thought was really cool? And it was about, I think I couldn't sleep last night after watching all this. And one thing that came to mind was, like, this was the first time in a long time that it felt like stormtroopers were actually pretty intimidating. Like, this is what stormtroopers did well. When they started coming down and they just stood there, or they were standing in the door and they were just kind of staring down the crowd, even when they were bringing the riot gear, the young team out there in the middle, to have them backstopped by the stormtroopers and you just see them there and they're just kind of gazing and they've got their weapons. You actually feel, if you're one of those people in that crowd and you see that happening, like you start to understand why stormtroopers are a really menacing presence and something that would inspire fear, that faceless fear to anybody that would come across them. Right. And I mean, and actually White said it really well here. He's like, finding words to describe some of this stuff is really difficult to do. But I think when you look at the music, the way they used, like, just to nerd out a little bit, like the cellos and some of the layering of the music as they kind of came across and created kind of a theme for a massacre. It was just incredible the way that they were kind of doing this scene with everything that was going on. The action was cool. I expected more blasters and stuff like that. But, and again, I got my Razor Crest moment kind of wrong. I think my Razor Crest moment, if I recall, was I thought, Andor or Luthen or someone like that would fire the first shot. It makes sense. It's the Empire. So I'm not heartbroken about that one at all. And it makes total sense that they wanted to spark this thing and they needed somebody to do it. And the crowd wasn't doing it themselves, but they knew they were armed so that they would take that first shot. You're right. It was telegraphed. And Utini was talking a little bit about this in Discord as well, that everything we saw wasn't really necessarily surprising in most cases. But when you do it really well and you do it as powerfully, somehow you do it as powerfully and everything comes together. And I got to be honest with you, I think it's these sets that really play a big part of it. I mean, we talked about the volume and we've talked about the differences of this Andor series, first and second, compared to what we've seen in other Star Wars content. The scale of these sets is incredible. I mean, this is a real set, like the thing that we're seeing with the Senate. I mean, that's a real location, I think in Spain or something like that, between the Senate buildings, right? All of that's real. That's not a set. That's actually real life. Like you can go there and visit it, right? And like, it's just really cool to be able to see that. And you have that space and you have all the things that you can kind of piece together with it, and I think those all make a big difference. And when they brought the KX droids out, like, I got to be honest with you, I never really thought that they'd be that, like, I was like, okay, they're droids. The droids usually have guns and stuff like that. They just walk out there and they just start throwing people and killing people just from the crack of their bones as they hit the ground. I mean, it was absolutely powerful, and you start to understand the menace of what they have. And like you said, Kaito just doesn't care. It all went perfectly to plan. His little smirk, absolutely brilliant. Just the slightest thing, and then goes back to business, walks off, and let's give the next command. But
yeah,
I mean, it's difficult to really lay out all the things that were wonderful about this scene, as violent as it was. But man, the whole build up to it was probably the majority of it, though. I mean, everything from the sound, the singing. I mean, it's just they created this tense moment. You couldn't help but just be constantly inching towards your screen and grabbing the edge of your chair, even if you do it subconsciously, right? And I think I felt that almost all the way through episode 8. It just felt like we were always getting there. And episode 9 had many of those same moments as well. But man, it just felt like the entire time, like you just didn't quite know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it felt like anything could happen, even though we know where Andor goes, but you just didn't really know. We were always waiting for the other shoe to drop with Wilmot or any of the other Ghorman resistance, right? So who's actually going to live, who's going to die, and why?
Yeah.
And how casually they'll die and get thrown away. I think just to talk about death in Andor real quick, in the Andor series, it's really, I think it's becoming more apparent, like the way that people die in the series are totally intentional, where they just don't, they're unceremonious and they don't mean anything. We kind of don't mean anything in a broader sense, because that's generally what Luthen kind of has been preaching the entire time, is like, it's going to take sacrifice to do this, and everybody has a role to play, but you don't necessarily remember all the names.
Mm-hmm.
So very intentional how it goes. Even though we get attached to them, we have to kind of move on and forget about them and move to the next scene, because that's what war is.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what they're showing us what war is.
Right, exactly.
Clearly never been at war, but yeah.
Yeah, war is hell. But yeah, it was that whole, it's hard to talk about, because it's just one of those things it's you gotta be a part of as you're watching it. There were the one thing that really kept me on the edge of my seat, and you talked about this, was just not knowing who was next, right? Who was going to live. I mean, we saw Tazzy die early on. I think Enza gets shot, Sam gets shot, Dylan gets shot. It's like,
Enza gets thrown.
Yeah, no, it's Enza gets thrown. That's right. Yeah,
breaks her neck or whatever.
Yeah, from the KX droids, which yeah, I'm with you too. Like we saw their strength back in season 1, especially when that one picked up Cassian and shoved him against the wall. We've seen K2SO do the same thing during Rogue One. These droids were not, I mean, they're not like, they're called security droids, but they were never really security droids. I think that was just a like a fancy way of calling them, or a fancy way or a secret way of making battle droids or whatever. I forget now how all that happens, where they were banned or they weren't allowed to make them anymore, but they called them security droids or whatever. But I mean, they're extremely strong. You can see why there's an appeal from Cassian to get one of these things a little bit later, right? Even though that didn't really go the way I thought it was going to go at all.
Yeah.
But I want to go just to that moment there where I forget who directed this. Was it
Janice?
Is it Janice that did this?
Yeah.
Yeah. They slowed down the camera. It went into slow motion with Syril there.
Yeah. And
you can see him actually crying as everything was going on. There's a tear that comes down his eye.
Actually, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. It's in the auto descriptions as well. They talk about, you can see his eye, but he's got one tear that's kind of coming down. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it was just a very powerful, very emotional moment for everybody. I didn't feel like, I felt bad for everyone involved, except for the Empire, of course, which I think is probably what they were going for here. But we do get that other moment too, where the bellhop guy, Thela, I think is his name now. I just remember that, but he throws that grenade out that blows up, and that distracts Cassian from taking that shot. He had Dedra in his sights. He was ready to pull the trigger. And because that thing was thrown, it threw him off. And it exposed where, that whole area there. And this leads into one of the more brutal fights that we've had in Star Wars between, I called it the Morlana 1 rematch, because really it's, Syril versus Andor again. Syril spots him standing there. He's about to shoot yet again. He's about to shoot Dedra, and this is where he just kind of, body checks him. That fight was absolutely brutal. I mean, a lot of it was the sound design and the sound effects they were using for it, but it was well choreographed. I saw some of the declassified stuff where they were talking about they spent a lot of time on that choreography, like weeks and weeks trying to get it right. It really paid off. It was very intense. We got to see Syril just completely bloodlusted and battle raged. Like we had never seen him before. Like he was really sticking it to Cassian, who's, a soldier and has been, fighting people for quite a long time now. But Syril was holding his own definitely on all of that. It was just crazy to see all that, to kind of go down. And that fight in itself was very tense. Like I wasn't sure who was going to come out of that. Well, okay, I knew who was going to come out of that fight. I just wasn't sure if that was going to be where the last that we saw Syril. Like I thought, okay, Cassian's going to kill him. And to see him have that one up at the very end where he's got the blaster and he's holding it in front of Cassian, only to start lowering it when he realizes, holy crap, who am I? What am I doing? And then get shot in the head. I don't know if you caught that, but he starts lowering his blaster. Yeah. And that's when he's shot in the head. And that's, again,
right after Cassian asks him, who are you?
Who are you? Which is funny.
He really just doesn't know like who he is, because Cyril's been hunting him forever, but Andor has no idea any of this stuff is going on for the most part.
And I can't remember, like even back on Morlana 1, like he didn't see his face. Remember, Cassian was behind him the whole time.
Right.
So he would have no reason to know who he is, quite honestly.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. But yeah, you're right. When he starts lowering the weapon, you start to question, like, okay, is he questioning who he is, or is he actually having a moment of clarity finally to where he needs to like have a conversation? You're like, oh, we're going to get some dialogue here. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Xylens comes and pops him one and, gets his revenge, I think, on Syril and save, Cassian at the same time. But man, it was a little bit funny about this fight is actually, it was really well choreographed and it was well acted and all of that. It was just too over the topness of actually didn't fit for me. Like these guys were like smashing their heads into the floor, into the wall. And I get it. This happens in movies literally all the time. If you watch Punisher, there's no way someone could take that kind of abuse. But it was just a little more than what we typically see in Star Wars, I think. And then in Andor in particular, things are grounded in a little more realism. And then some of the sound effects were a little overdone in my opinion.
No way, dude. It was like Skywalker sound circa 83 with, Indiana Jones type punches that were happening in that fight.
Yeah. So if that's your bag, it's great in those movies. It was just really, it felt different in the Andor one. It was a different fight sequence. But again, you're right, the emotional charge of it and Syril finally just having like this animalistic rage was absolutely great. Like to see him finally come face to face with his white whale, the one thing he's been hunting, and then just to be able to unleash all the stuff that's been happening, all the betrayal. And it all started with Andor. It's all his fault.
Yep, that's exactly it.
It all goes back to it. To have someone to pour all that rage into, like you said, was actually really great. And then that moment of, I don't know if it's doubt or second guessing or introspection, whatever you want to call it, we will never know.
Yep.
Right. And then
Right.
a little bittersweet in that way, because we want to know what the hell he was thinking. Right. And you're not going to get that story.
Let's see. A couple comments here. Alan says, I love the Cassian and Syril fight. I'm so happy they got that confrontation. Rob says, Syril was completely running on adrenaline. I don't think he would have done so well otherwise. Probably.
Well, he had the element of surprise too. Yeah. But
Yeah.
absolutely agree, Rob. Yeah.
Cassian really sent Syril down an identity crisis and made him question who he is in a fundamental level. Yeah. Kyle Solar's acting. Wow. You know, I think it was Rollins or someone said earlier that they really did pick some really great people here that had a lot of theater experience, and it shows. Like the acting chops on this series is just off the charts. It's better than arguably anything in Star Wars, quite honestly. Let's just be honest. There's some great actors. I'm not saying there weren't, and there's been some really great moments, particularly in Rogue One. There's some really great moments, but you know, you think about some of the speeches that we had, some of the performances that we've had. We've already called off a number of them, but this is really top class stuff that we're getting here, and we're just happens to be in Star Wars. As good as Peter Griffin versus the chicken.
Actually, you know, Rob, I think that's exactly what was in my head.
Maybe. Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good fight too. But okay. So yeah, Syril died. So sad. Sorry. But Willman eventually finds Cassian. You know, they start looking for Drina. You know, they get attacked by the KX droid.
Willman's a little stud, man.
Yeah.
He's got the ladies all in a huff over him these days.
Yeah. Well, that's what that Rodian does. It just puts hair in your chest, I guess, or something. I'm not really sure.
The Rido.
Yeah, the Rido.
Rido high.
Right on.
That's right.
And then they're being chased, which actually was kind of scary to see them running through that alley or that I don't know, corridor or the street or whatever they were on, and see that KX droid just coming at them. That was actually kind of frightening because it was just leveling people left and right. I mean,
the dude that got thrown up on the wall. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was great stuff. But then luckily Sam is the one who smashes into K2SO, cuts him in half, and then Cassian tells Wilmon that, hey, you need to come with us, and he's like, no, I need to go after Drina, trust me kind of thing. They do the whole stone whatever goodbye that they use for Ferrix.
Right.
And then that's where Cassian says, hey, I need some help with this droid. So I don't know, compared to the comic book, I didn't really like the comic book, but there was more probably in the comic than this. So I don't know which one was better now. I thought this would be like a more meaningful one. And it doesn't have to be, quite honestly. Like that's really not important. What's more important is that after he has him activated, what does that relationship look like? Because that's what I appreciated the most about their relationship in Rogue One. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I don't know which one was better now, the comic book version or this one, which was kind of just really quick and over within about 3 seconds.
Yeah, kind of none of the above, I guess. There was nothing really special about it, I guess, right? It was just, and again, why did he feel the need to bring it back to the rebellion? Is it that he thought it would be useful, or what was the intent? Something they could learn from it? I don't really know. That wasn't explained overly well either, especially if they're just going to kind of reprogram and then like, hey, you've got a companion now. We can replace Bix with K2SO. We can replace your codependency on one with somebody else, I suppose. And so, but I mean, actually, that's kind of how it works. But it was interesting, that this was the origin of that he was stalking them. And I mean, I'm okay with it. I mean, because it kind of makes sense in some ways. Again, why he collected him is maybe the question mark. But at the end of the day, this is probably the most realistic scenario of their meeting, rather than having to go through all of the exposition of why is K2 different, or is there something faulty in his logic, and you're able to manipulate that, and he's got to go behind him, and you kind of get all of that type of stuff. And does that feel authentic either? And I think when you look at it like an authenticity type of standpoint of what makes sense, the way they did it in Andor season 2 was actually quite clean, and that just probably works better overall than any other scenario we could have had. So I think it just makes sense in that way.
I mean, I can see the value though, right? I mean, this is not your typical RT unit. This is a ISB security droid, right? And we see what the benefit of that is in Rogue One, how they're able to use them and in disguise and do some things that they've never been able to do. So I can see where there's a definitely appeal for it. And this is not the kind of droid that you can just go, snatch somewhere, right? The fact that they rammed it with this shuttle or whatever it was, a transport ship, and broke it in half, gave them the opportunity. And so I think Andor was just thinking, look, I don't want to waste this opportunity. This is probably something they've been after. It's a huge asset. This could be really beneficial to us, especially if we're trying to infiltrate the Empire, et cetera, et cetera. And so let's get it on the ship and let's try to take it back home and try to fix it, kind of thing. So that's not lost on me. It's just, Zora Allen said she preferred the comic book version more. I'm almost kind of leaning that way now just because it felt like more material than this one, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So we do get one quick moment here with Dedra, where she's completely shattered. She's clawing at her uniform. It was not Vader. I think we said that was not Vader. Sorry to break anybody's bubble, but
right.
He wouldn't have been coming in here. But yeah, the whole trembling thing that she was going through, and then she tried to compose herself again after all of this has gone on. This is the last that we see of her in this episode. Do you think she becomes an important figure in this last arc? Let me just leave that question there.
Well, I think we need to see her and see where she goes, because I think, how important she is going to be interesting, though, because is she kind of mentally broken after all of this in some way? Does she have remorse? Does she feel like the reward was worth what they did? And again, we're going to hear, I think, more about what happened to Ghorman and the after effects of it. I hope we do at the very least. We need to reference back to this event because it was a critical juncture of a lot of things happening and catalysts that happened throughout the rebellion, and a really stark turn of people's view of the Empire, I think, here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. So I'm really hoping so. And I think Dedra, she's a piece of that remembrance of all of it too, of what is the legacy of Ghorman in a variety of ways. But again, when you flash forward a year, man, what to expect is a little bit tough because they can jump so much and characters kind of move through all of their emotions without you with them. So where they end up sometimes is a little bit tough to get there. But yeah, I'm with you, man. The extreme, panic and anxiety and everything, and trying to kind of force yourself back like you're an Imperial. This is what we do. Pull it together. Brave face. You're going to get past this. You're going to move out. Everything's going to be fine. But I think we're going to see some lasting impact for Dedra here in some way. I hope we do at the very least. We want to humanize her a little bit,
right?
To where maybe she at least recognizes, and I think we're already seeing this. She recognizes what she did is wrong, but she's going to keep doubling down on the things that are wrong because she doesn't really know what else to do.
And I think I was just thinking about this. I do think we're going to see her next arc.
Oh yeah, I think so.
What's that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because they made such a concerted effort to really show that they're after her and they still want to go after her. And, they probably blame her now. At least Wilmon does. He blames her for everything that's happened, right? He talked about, look, she's been after you since Ferrix and all that. And, she doesn't have Syril now. So there's no retirement that she was talking about or getting away from the Empire that she was kind of talking about. I don't even know if she really believed that, quite honestly, but she's going to get a promotion, right? Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. She orchestrated everything. She was the maestro in the eyes. This is what Partagaz has been saying. Krennic has said it as well. It gets reemphasized in this episode. So she's primed for a high position now in the Empire. And I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly she's now kind of like the main focus of doing all the bad things. She may be doubling down on the horrible things now because she doesn't have anything else left, right? Other than her career. And she's now locked in with these crazy people, and she's part of this cult that's the Empire. So why not give into it all at that point?
All right, I got a really twisted question to ask you.
Okay.
What are the odds that Eedy is the one that puts her down?
Well, no, I don't think. I'd love to see it.
My boy from me.
No, yeah, sure. I'd love to see it, but how Eedy would even get into like an ISB or Imperial thing? You just walk in like Andor says.
Unassuming old lady. I mean, yeah.
She bakes her a cake laced with some kind of poison or something.
There you go. See, we have options.
That's ageist. I shouldn't have said that. I don't know. I don't even know people bake cakes. I don't know what that meant. But
you bake people. She has a birthday, I'm sure. You just wait for the right time.
She's going to slide her a bowl of cereal.
This is going down a little bit of a dark path. I didn't really mean it to, but poetic justice, I think, in some ways.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
But let's talk about Eedy for a second, though. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more, but I think also because she probably, I don't know if she has that confirmation that Syril was part of the dead. I don't know if they had released that part, but she seems to at least be maybe convinced that it was. And to see her have that emotion that she really truly does love her son,
Right.
you know, come through at least in some way, that she wasn't really the cold, heartless type of person just thinking about herself. Like she really did love her son. You know, I think at the end of the day it was kind of gut wrenching in a way, because you just no parent wants to lose their kid. I think even the bad ones, you still remember them when they were not bad or making bad decisions, and you still love them in some way, right? So
Yeah.
it was kind of devastating for any parent to kind of know that their kid was there, and especially she didn't want him to be there. She's like, you need to come home, you need to be there. It doesn't feel right. All this stuff is going on, you know, and propaganda be what it was. She wasn't wrong.
Yeah, for the record, Jason Voorhees' mom loved him as well. So
I'm sure so did Jason or Bates or whatever, Norman Bates'
mom too. Yeah, you're right. They don't confirm that she knew he did die. I think she probably knows. I kind of chalked it up to like a mother's instinct if it wasn't explicitly told to her. The fact that she had two people there that looked like they were kind of consoling her is kind of the case. And then she was crying. But otherwise, I mean, it just felt sad because, you know, she's sitting there thinking about she probably blames Dedra, quite honestly. Right? She's going to go find somebody to blame. She's not going to blame her son.
My question was somewhat genuine about will she seek out Dedra and try to enact a little revenge?
I think she would want to, but I can't see how she would do that. Maybe she.
Do you think she would hire Uncle Harlow?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I hope it doesn't go there. Like it doesn't turn into Sopranos. Nothing against the Sopranos because it's a great series, but I hope it doesn't go there.
You don't have to go that far for this to turn into a bit of Sopranos.
Okay. Where is your tinfoil hat? Is it around? Do you have it
it's always
accessible there? Okay.
It's always nearby. You kidding me?
There you go. All right. Go ahead. Now you can talk freely about whether or not Eedy is going to.
I'll have my fan fiction ready by next week.
Okay. All right. Let's get into. We're coming down the stretch here. Let's get into Mon Mothma now. So we got a couple scenes that happened earlier on in that first episode. There was like two quick ones where she shows up at the Senate building. She's got Clarice or whatever her driver asking her where she's going to be. It's clear that, you know, he's working for the ISB and they're keeping tabs on where she is at all times, what her patterns and behaviors are. They just want to know where she's at, as well as all the other senators, but her in particular, because she's been that thorn in the side. When she walks away, she makes that comment to Erskine that like she wants a new driver. Like she's done with this. This guy's been tailing her and tracking her for the better part of like 3 years now. Well, there is. We do get some quick updates on the Imperial side about you know, what's going on in Ghorman. The Senator Oren from Ghorman stops and talks to Mon Mothma. You know, says thank you for everything that she's done. He does make that comment about they don't even bother to lie badly anymore, and he calls that the final humiliation. And that really is what it's come down to. It's like Partagaz says a little bit later. It's like we're done. Like that was so last year, and at this point, it's, you know, this is probably more routine than anything else. But they're done playing with that. They're just going to start, you know, taking what they want because they're the Empire.
When you start to see when Palpatine dissolves the Senate, you start to see that they care less and less about any of the influence that the perceptions of the galaxy begin to start to be less and less of how much they, you know, care about what they are viewed as. And I think you start to seeing that in this moment specifically, especially when they make the commitment to go ahead and do what they know is going to completely rip this planet apart. Like they're already down that path, and it's just a matter of time before we see all that. So it's really starting to make really strong connections with what we see in A New Hope and Rogue One.
Yep. And then when we get into this, I mean, he says, you know, thank her for her, you know, boldness, her grace, the energy that she brings to the Senate. When we come back over to her, to the Senate in the third episode, he's now under arrest by the Empire because of what happened there on Ghorman. You know, we get a quick scene between Bail and Mon talking about the massacre itself, and you know what the Imperial News is covering here. You know, and she says they haven't won yet. I thought that was a pretty nice little line there because we know how all this is all going to end. And she talks about she wants to give a speech. You know, that she wants both of them to leave, and this is where he tells her, "Look, I can't leave. I need to stick around. They're still young. Essentially, it's very green. We don't have an actual rebel alliance yet, which is the point he was making. And so someone still needs to stick around, still be left behind to stall before, you know, the Empire goes in and tries to like squelch this thing any further than it already has. And so yeah, they agree that he's going to stay there, and she needs to go practice the speech because she's going to deliver it. And so this whole episode's really kind of about, the speech and then Mon Mothma, of course. But the way this was kind of set up was kind of brilliant.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, we kind of get the before the massacre and then afterwards, and again, you all with the news feeds kind of in the background when they're in the Senate, just you can always kind of hear what the narrative is, and it's very much one of the Imperials did everything they could. They were ambushed. They were maybe not ambushed, but they were they were the ones that were the victims of all of this. And you hear them in the Senate a little bit later with the martyrdom type of speeches and how people have lost out. And you could see how easily this was for them to spin it this way. And they've been spending so much time over the years. And this is the payday, right? This is the moment where they finally get to really lean into all of that and appeal to people's emotional sides. And again, do you have to worry about public opinion? The Ghormans did it to themselves this entire time. They've been stoking insurgency for 2 years now, or for at least the better part of a year. So it was just inevitable that we were there and we did the best we could, and they really lashed out at us, and this is the effect. So now we get to reap the rewards of it. You're on mute.
131. Okay, so let's talk about Cassian now. He is now heading out here to the Senate building. He's got this new identity that Clea has given him called Ronnie Gouge or Gouge?
Gouja.
Gouja? Okay, whatever. And then Clea shames him. Like, he talks about how he's done after this. He's not doing anything more. And Clea kind of shames him about everything. And
I love Clea.
It was great. And I love her. Yeah, exactly. Keep going.
This entire season, she has been absolutely amazing.
She really has been.
I love everything about her.
Yep. But he talks about, I need to start making my own decisions. I thought that, and she says that, I thought that's what we were fighting for. I was like, oh,
ooh,
yeah, take that, dude.
Man, sharp burn on that one.
We have the scene next where they find the bug. So Erskine's kind of patrolling. He finds that bug in there. She destroys it. Mon Mothma does. This, of course, signals the ISB agents that something's going on. They lose a signal in her office. And so this brings in, what's that guy's name? I've got it down here later down the road, but, what was the ISB agent name that came in? He wasn't even supposed to be there. More on that here in a little bit.
Yeah,
I forget
the whole Clerks reference. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's what they were going for, but you're right. That's
right. Yeah. He's basically the agent on call. He got called in and now he can't go home.
And now he can't go home. He's stuck there. What about that Luthen and Mon scene? Like you said, we didn't get a lot of Luthen in here, but when they did meet and, he's talking about, he opens up by saying, look, Erskine's been working for me for like the last 2 years. And you can just see the look on her face. Not only is she feeling, again, betrayed, lied to by Erskine, but this kind of leads into her thoughts of like, holy crap, you remember Tay Colma? You killed him because, he was at risk, and now I'm a risk. Are you going to do the same thing to me? You could see it all over her face. And again, kudos to Genevieve O'Reilly for what she does acting wise in the scene. But that was a pretty tense scene.
Yeah, I loved this. I mean, and again, you see why. I mean, and she's not wrong. I mean, she's looking at it logically. Like, you viewed Tay Colma as a risk just because he might say something. What do you think about me? I know everything, like literally everything. Why wouldn't you want to put me down? And I think part of it's a bit of an emotional response. I think some of it's a genuine, I think there's always been a healthy amount of distrust, with her to him. And I think he views her as a little naive in some of this stuff too, and happy to be blind to it. Of course, we know a little bit better. And she alludes to that a little bit later on. Like, she's known some betrayal in her life, and she's committed some betrayal in her life as well. So we know those things about her, but within that context, it was really great to see that, though, because, I mean, you could feel that fear. It was real, and I think justifiably so. And how do you know you're not the next one on the list? But what she doesn't recognize is the amount of respect that I think that Luthen truly does have for her. And he tries to say it, whether or not it comes through very genuine. She kind of cuts him short anyway.
It was a little rough.
What was that?
Oh, I said it was a little rough.
It was, because he's not used to doing that too.
Right.
But I think he was starting to kind of try it, because I think he really does view, like, you are the person that will help usher us into another era of where this needs to go and actually get us across the finish line, or at least we will go down fighting and we will have a fighting chance as a result of it. But it's people like her that he continues to invest in and want to protect as a result of all of that. And she views it as, am I next, when he's really like saying, no, you're the one. And I've just got to do, and the people all around you, Erskine included, are all doing things to try to protect you and keep you as pure and on focus and on target as possible, even if you don't necessarily see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it's just kind of Luthen. He's got to be the bad guy to everybody because you kind of need it. And he says as much in many ways of like his place is to do the things, and he's not, when we said it in season 1, he's, you know, there's a tomorrow he's never going to see. You know, he recognizes that already, and, you know, he'll do what he needs to do to make sure the people who will bring that tomorrow continue to survive and thrive in some way.
He also gives her word here that this group of people that are going to escort her out after she delivers her speech, the ones that Bail has gathered, that they're corrupt in some way.
This arc was really interesting because you heard the name of who the agent was, who hired the agent, right?
Yeah, it was Johnny Young.
Lonnie, yeah.
Yeah, Lonnie Young.
It's like, okay, was this intentional? Was this set up with Luthen, or did Lonnie finally have enough of Luthen and some of the tension we saw earlier on, you know, in previous episodes finally come to a head, and he's now selling them out to the ISB? Like, what did you kind of take? I'm sorry to jump ahead, but what would you take from some of that?
Yeah, I didn't go conspiracy theory here. I kind of just took it at face value, meaning that, you know, Luthen had somebody on the inside working for the ISB in Lonnie, and Lonnie may have petitioned to have one of his people be part of that, or maybe he just got wind of it or somehow, and that was enough to tip off Luthen and let him know that it was there. But I mean, it is weird that he was the one that was kind of there. And again, we'll probably never have the context as to what exactly happened, but I didn't go conspiracy theory, but I can definitely see where you could go down a rabbit hole here of like, you know, was this set up? Was this him trying to get back at Luthen for, like you said, all that stuff that he's put him through over the years?
Yeah, I think of all of the kind of the question marks, that was one of the ones that I think was the one that stuck out to me of like, I don't understand. I really just don't think I understand like what that scenario was very well.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping Declassify would have talked a little bit about it. Of course, they talked mostly about Ghorman and the actual Senate speech, but, you know, I wish we get more of that. I hope we get some context outside of all this in an interview or something where he talks about what he actually meant to say there, because it's just not really clear to me.
Mm-hmm. Before he leaves, he does tell her that he's got a guy that's going to show up. He gives her the code phrase of, I have friends everywhere. He says it twice. I do have friends everywhere as well, for what it's worth. And then he leaves. And that's all we really get from Luthen. You know, he shows up a little bit later, or at least they mention him a little bit later, but that's about it for this series, this arc. Okay. By the way, we should mention, because I don't have this explicitly called out in the notes, the fact that Mon Mothma dismissed Erskine like almost immediately.
Yeah.
That was pretty powerful, especially since, you know, we see them like when that happened, I thought, well, wait a minute. Like, he's with her when we get to Rebels. And someone pointed out, like, the character of Erskine in Rebels looks like this actor. Like, they did a great job of casting this guy.
But the character in Rebels is so much less than this character.
Oh, I know. I meant like physically, like facially, he looks very similar.
Yeah, the features are
It's the features, more than anything. But yeah, she dismisses him.
But I love it. Like, even when they see each other in the safe house later on, like, she's happy to see him. And that dedication and that loyalty is still very much there. And that never wavered, even if she fired him.
Right.
You know, he was still going to be there and do what needed to be done, because that's his job.
Yeah. And she was hurt. That's why she couldn't look at him. Yeah. She had her back to him the whole time. Even after he said it's been an honor, she didn't even acknowledge him.
Yeah. Totally justifiable. Yeah.
Yeah. So where are we at here? Okay. So Mon is going, but not Luthen. He doesn't get to go to Yavin. He says he's got more work to do there. Cassian threatens that they're going to find him. This is where him and Cassian are talks about how eventually the Empire is going to kill them both. And then Cassian says that he, wants to make his own decisions. And this is where we get into that whole type of thing. Is the cosmic force? Is it faith? Is it whatever else? But it is, Luthen brings it up that, look, you appeared when I needed you, and you were there on all these critical moments, so something's there as well. Do you have anything on that? I know it was kind of glossed over. It was a really quick exchange between the two.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it earlier in the show. So
yeah. All right. Let's get to Bail's team coming in. So we get Bail's team. They're starting to come into the Senate. We've got Cassian and Andor starts coming into the Senate. We learned that they're not going to let any senator speak up as a result of the Ghorman massacre. They can't really talk about it like they would normally. Logret, that's the guy. I had his name in here somewhere. I just couldn't find it. But Logret is the guy. He's the ISB agent that was on call and got suckered into taking this little gig. But he's running that ISB command central now. And this is where Bail then tells them to head to Gate 9 after they're done. And Mon asks Bail, can he trust them? He says he can, but he can't because of his relationship. He has no idea who these people are. I have questions about like who they are really and like how did they get assembled, but probably not important. It's stuff that would have probably been explained at some point during a 12 episode season for this year 2. He does say that he said next year in Yavin. So I suspect in the next season or the next arc, we're going to see him there on Yavin. We know he's there by Rogue One.
We see him there in Rogue One, and
right.
The next year will literally lead into Rogue One directly. So
yeah, that'd be cool that we're going to see more of him, and that was great. I mean, he did a really good job of. I didn't even bat an eye, honestly, for Benjamin playing here.
Well, in the whole Article 17-252 or whatever it was is so Bail Organa. By the way, right. if you read Mask of Fear, that type of thing is just so him of finding these loopholes and finding ways to manipulate situations. He's a craftsman at that type of influence and shaping things kind of to his direction, sometimes not necessarily working out for him. But in this case, I think the question is when him staying though, it seems like a bullseye would be pointing him because he served Mon Mothma up on a tray to do what she did. How would he not have significant repercussions to pay as a result of that? I mean, that's the part that might be a bit of a gap, and maybe next week we'll resolve some of that and give us some influence or idea of how he survived that, because it seems like he would have been like number 2 behind Mon Mothma on the people of the Empire on the most wanted list at this point for just giving her that opportunity and clearly knowing what her motives were.
Yeah. I mean, we knew they were always looked at. I mean, he's got his own daughter that's being looked at too. They're all under the microscope from the Empire. So I don't know. We've talked about this, I think, in the past. It's kind of crazy to think that they were able to stick around as long as they did and not be touched by the Empire. But I guess in the end, the Empire had the final laugh because they just, okay, we'll just blow up the whole planet. Right. So
yeah, true.
All right. All right, so let's get to the actual hearing now. This is where we get Beska is the name of the agent that Lonnie had sent out there. She's the ISB agent undercover. She gets caught by the other guy named Charvel or something like that was his name. And this is where she whacks him in the head and then shoots him. We get to Bail, inciting Article 17-252. Like you said, very Bail Organa of him by the book. And you just get the sense that, the Empire has kind of undone themselves here with the fact that they've got all these kinds of articles and stuff that they can throw in there later on when the feed can't get shut down because of, the red tape and bureaucracy that they placed in.
Well, no, those were rebels that did that though.
Well, I'm just saying, like, even still, like that's not, I mean, they locked it up and the key wasn't with them. Right. But there is a level of bureaucracy there that didn't allow that guy who probably should have had a key to begin with. He had to go to some other place to go get it. Right. It was just speaking to how complex these guys have made things and how they kind of undid themselves here, really. What about she gets up there, right? And she starts doing her speech. I know you were wanting to talk about the speech and we've got some time here. So let's get into, I'm not going to quote the whole speech. It's massively long. I wrote the entire thing out. I've read it many times. I loved so many parts of this. It is up there with some of the best speeches that we've gotten from, this series in particular, but just in Star Wars in general. It's very timely, I think, given our current situation in politics. It's very, it feels like this is like some of the best, I don't know, I keep saying it, but it feels like this was really some of the best Star Wars and certainly some of the best acting that we've ever gotten from Star Wars, and the way Genevieve O'Reilly really kind of, delivered this speech and the performance.
It was actually amusing to an extent of how slowly her pod went out. Like, it was almost like painful to watch, like, come on, speed it up.
Yeah.
But
somebody was out there pushing.
As powerful as the words were, it was the tension everywhere else of, I think flashing over to, are they going to be able to shut the feed down? And, they were running into obstacles, but at some point they're going to be able to get it. So is she going to be able to get it out? And it's going to happen, right? But at the same time, you're like, you feel it, right? You just start to get tense. You start to shake a little bit of like, what is she going to do? And you're right. And Tony Gilroy, while it does emulate a lot of our society these days in many facets, Tony Gilroy wrote this and said, look, these are timeless type of things, right? These types of behaviors are something we see repeated throughout history all of the time, so that we see them now or relate them now. They've been there, all the time in different regimes and in different leaderships, and even good societies and bad societies will have this type of thing. But it was just really powerful language, though, between the abyss, right? But it's a great mental picture of between the truth and reality, and not being able to discern them. And to get there, you have to cross this unimaginable depth of a canyon effectively to find it. And it's just impossible. How do you cipher through this if you're a normal person? How do you make heads or tails of it when you have people doubling down and both intentionally and then unwittingly, spreading the propaganda to where you incite these types of things and you incite more divide? It's really, it's the things that frustrated us about our own cultures and societies where we can't decipher what's real and what's not. But Genevieve O'Reilly was, of course, really excited about digging into the scene. She had Tony Gilroy write it specifically, and she just did it. She learned the whole thing and kind of did it all in, one session, I guess, maybe not one cut, but just one session of the way they did it. And absolutely wonderful. And kept waiting for Emperor Palpatine. I kept waiting for, was this going to start to fall into step with what we heard in Rebels? And when it didn't, I was like, okay, what the heck happened here? Like, what is going on? And did we really break all that? Because she's in a different outfit too, right? She's still got the blue cloak, which we knew from the trailer was inconsistent, but we're like, okay, well, wardrobe doesn't translate very well. So it was interesting to see, okay, this happened, but how far out do you think this message actually got? Because they cut the feed, so many people heard it, but maybe not everybody heard it. And that's why they needed to do kind of a rebroadcast later on or something to that extent.
Yeah, and they kind of explain that here. I think, later on they say that
in the safe house. Yeah.
Yeah, at the safe house, that they want to get the message out further, rewrite the message essentially, because, we don't know what was said after this when Mothma left. I'm sure someone came in and, tried to downplay this or spin it in some way. And so they want to rebrand that message and get it out broadly. I don't know that I had a problem with this. Like, in my head, I get it. And this is someone who absolutely loves Rebels. I love that scene. But, that scene was in service to that 20-minute episode. That's really all it was. I don't have a problem with this kind of going against the grain, if you will, of what's truly canon now at this point. Like, they're both television shows, but given the context of this audience and the series, this makes more sense that this would be the speech. And I think for what it did in Rebels, I think that worked just fine. That wasn't really the whole point of it. It was just to say that, look, she stood up. She's now in exile. And as a result of her being in exile, she's now on the run and wanted by the Empire. And she's been tagged as the person who was going to bring all of these different cells together and really form that Rebel Alliance. That's all that really was. And I think if you really boil down what the messages are in both Rebels and Andor, it's the same message. There's just more words, and it's more eloquently put in one versus the other. It's the same actors, but yeah, it's fitting for this particular series as opposed to Rebels. So I like both of them, quite honestly. I'm not going to say one's more canon than the other. I would probably lean on this one because I think it makes more sense, especially given what just happened with Ghorman and having that context of it all. But it was everything I wanted from that speech, quite honestly.
I think what made this one maybe a little more special than Rebels was the passion behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The emotionally charged situation, being on the heels of the Ghorman massacre and not having really enough time for it to process, and those being really raw emotions. When we see it in Rebels, she's pretty calm and stoic and saying, I name the Emperor and that type of thing. Not here. Yeah. The monster's going to come get us all, and that person is Emperor Palpatine, and I think that's the one you really want to, that's the one you go get super excited about, right? And then you come back and you kind of follow it up with more clarity and maybe a little more polish. But man, that emotional response, you capture that lightning in a bottle. You just have to, right? And I think you're right. I think this one is that one to truly make people take notice of someone like Mon Mothma. And she talks about her credibility too, right? So she's not like she's leaning on some of those things of like, hey, you know me, and you
Right.
know how I approach these, you know how I view things, and how dedicated I am to our, not this imperial sense of, being, but the ideology of what we have. And I appreciate all of the challenges that go with the political process. Right. But this is just outright wrong, and at some point we have to stand up and say what's right and wrong. And that conviction, I think, is what makes Mon Mothma such a powerful character. And so wonderful to see this on screen finally.
Yeah, I do want to move on just because of the time. I think at some point it would be nice to come back and revisit the speech in greater detail, maybe juxtapose that with, the rebel speech again, word for word. We can take the context of that. But then I also thought it would be fun to kind of just take a look at some of the speeches that we got from Andor when the whole series is over, and just, reflect on them and talk about what that means, from a rebellion perspective, from the empires, et cetera. So we'll table this for now. We'll come back to it. There's just a lot in here and to honestly discuss, and we're really getting over on time. But once she's done with the speech, she heads out. This is where Cassian meets her. He gives her the phrase eventually of "I have friends everywhere." He mentioned that the ISB wants her detained. He goes on to say, "Look, I know Vel." He starts name dropping, right? Aldani. He talks about Yavin. He talks about Luthen. He's doing whatever he can to get her to believe him, because she's rightfully doesn't know if this is the right person, or she can even trust him.
Right.
They eventually make their way down to Gate 9, where Erskine meets up with them. They've got a crowd of reporters there that are trying to, get the exclusive on what she just said, get comments from her. And of course, Beskha then reveals herself as the ISB agent. Cassian shoots Beskha. That was pretty far away. I wasn't expecting that to happen the way it did, because it just out of nowhere, he just kills her. But it feels like
it was interesting. Erskine called her a rebel spy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To distract her.
To distract her. Yeah. That was good on him.
Well, again, it goes back to, he was willing to take that shot because she rounded on him and was about to just shoot him before Andor took him out.
Yep. Yeah, and another point for his loyalty, right? He says he's going to stick around. He'll stay behind. He tells them to go. He says, I think the line where she says, I'm not sure I can do this. And he says, well, welcome to the rebellion, right? Good stuff there. They're going out the building. The stormtroopers start arriving. That whole point, that whole scene where he calls Cloris's name, or was it Claris or Cloris's name?
Cloris, yeah.
Yep. And says that we found her, kind of thing. And it just kind of shocks him enough that he pulls the gun and shoots him. And you can see Mon's face on that. Like, if he pauses,
like, oh my, what did you do?
I mean, she's absolutely freaked out, right? That she just shot. I mean, she's known this guy. I mean, she hates a dude and she wanted a new one, but she's known him for, 3-4 years at least at this point, maybe even longer. Who knows how long that's been going on? But eventually he jumps in there. Like, he grabs her hand, takes her, jumps into the car or the airspeeder, and they head out. And so they eventually go to the safe house, and Cass takes Mon to the safe house. Erskine's there. We talked a little bit about him, that kind of exchange. It's a little bit softer now, especially what they just both went through. We've got Clea there as well. Wilmon is there with Drina. Wilmon's been shot. He looked like his leg was like really messed up.
Yeah.
And when they said we need to get him to a real doctor, I started thinking, I wonder if they'll take him to that doctor from like, what was it? You remember the first season with the guy with the 4 arms or whatever?
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's like, take him there. That guy can fix anybody.
He's 0 for 1 on the ones in the crew. So just saying.
Well, that guy had he had a big gunshot, not a leg wound or whatever.
No, he got crushed by the gold or whatever it was, all the credits. Yeah. That was Nemec, right?
Yeah, it was Nemec. That's right. And then we learned that Mon's going to Yavin. She's going to be escorted by Gold Squadron. I was like, okay, that's all lining up with Star Wars Rebels.
Did you buy Clea's comments to Cassian when she's like, you must be exhausted? Like, she was just very empathetic to him. Like, you must be exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt a little out of place for Clea in that moment. I don't know.
It felt kind of desperate. Like, I saw it as kind of desperate. Like, okay, he already said he was leaving. And, she's like, oh, I don't want you to leave. Oh, look at you. You look so tired. You want to rest, kind of thing. She's probably never done that before. But now the fact that he's on the brink of exiting, she's trying to be a little bit more sympathetic. That was all.
And maybe she didn't honestly think this was going to work out. Like, how did you pull this off type of thing?
Well, she even says it. Yeah, she says that. I think she's being sincere about it. Like, how the hell did you get her out of that Senate building with everybody on high alert at that point?
I just walked out. It's that easy. Go find the car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Cass wants to take Woman to a doctor. Eventually, he's going to take him over to Yavin. And she says, I'm not sure how to thank you. He says, make it worth it. And she kind of gives her a little nod, and we move to Yavin. All right, we're wrapping up here. I didn't understand the Melshi thing. I mean, it was great that we saw him, but it was such a quick scene, and the whole blaster, which I was like, what's the blaster? And then when I watched it back with the audio description on, it said it was Syril Karn's blaster.
That doesn't sound right.
No, I kid you not. It says, Vel finds Syril's old blaster. That's when she rubs that thing off. And I'm like, wait, how does Syril's blaster play into any of this? And even says Syril's blaster from Morlana 1 is what the audio description says.
Oh, wow. I did not pull all that together. I couldn't remember what the logo was when they erased it. But why would that be equated to Melshi?
I don't know. That's exactly what I was saying. I have no idea.
Well, there you go. Now you need a book.
All right. Whatever. Go listen to it. See if somebody can figure out.
It's so long, Albert. I can't go listen to the Albert. I can't listen to the Albert. I can't listen to the Albert either.
I can't listen to the Albert either.
I can't go back and listen again with all of the audio descriptions on like multiple times. It's just too much.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried it. I watched that scene a few times trying to understand. I have a question, and literally my notes is, what the hell is going on here? I don't know. But I mean, we get Melshi, so it's, we got him back coming in the next episode.
Yeah.
This would make more sense. It's not Syril's blaster, it's Cassian's. But again, I'm just going off with the freaking, unless Cassian took Syril's blaster and I forgot. I don't know. I don't remember.
There's too many degrees of Kevin Bacon going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry about it. Don't stress it. Don't stress it, Zerallins.
Thanks for trying, Zerallins. We appreciate it.
Okay, so Will and Drina, Cassian arrives back on Yavin. He's got Will and Drina with him. Draven meets Cass and tells him, look, I'm not going to log anything, especially what just happened. Feels like he did him a solid by saying, look, we're not going to log this. Okay, I know I said he shouldn't be doing this, but given what happened, and you've got Mon Mothma coming now with Gold Squadron leading her in.
Well, and he came back, right?
Yeah, true. He came back.
Where do your loyalties truly lie? He came back.
Yep. He says that...
and in greater numbers.
He says that she's going to give yet another speech, and we hear that speech in Rebels, where she kind of brings everybody and makes the call for everybody to come together because they're ready to bring it all in. Cass then tells Draven about the KX droid that he needs repaired, which they did a pretty good turnaround job on fixing that droid.
Yeah.
Next morning, it's ready to go. All right, and then we get to like this was like the hardest part to watch.
Yeah, this was pretty devastating.
It was just like wrecking people all night long and continues to wreck people all day today. But Bix, he comes home. Bix is already trying to take care of him. He tells her that she's done, and you can see it all over her face, right? She's been thinking about this. She's already made her decision. Doesn't really matter what he says at this point. We can clearly see that. He says, I've done a lot, but I want this right here. I want to be with you. You can see the hurt on her face when she says that. He says he wants to find a place that's quiet and leave. And then asks her, like, why aren't you saying anything? Like, she's not reciprocating any of this, which, again, because her mind has already been made up on all of this. He then says that whole line about it. The only special thing about me is luck, and I've overplayed my hand already. Nothing's worth more than this. I mean it. And she says, I know you do. And I think she means that. She sincerely knows and believes that's exactly what Cassian wants, and that's why she cannot give it to him, right? And then she gives him the Dear John letter, which I want to say what's her name? I already dropped her name.
Adriana?
Yeah. Her acting in this was so good. And if you watched in what was it? It was during Star Wars Celebration, I think, when they had asked her, like, what was his experience like and what was the best things about it? And she goes on, and I think there's even something that came out today where she continues to praise Tony Gilroy for giving her the confidence to do this. Like, because she never saw herself as a really good actress. And this is what she was saying before Celebration. And so we hadn't seen this yet, but she was talking about this specific scene right here. Right. Because I don't know. I mean, I've seen some other things that she's been in, but there is and even if you compare what she delivers here to how she's acted, even in some of the other scenes, it's like a huge jump and leap as far as I'm concerned. And so I get exactly what she was talking about. It's very powerful. It's very moving. You get the sense that she did this for Cassian and Andor, but she did this for the greater good. She knows and believes in her heart, whether it's the Force talking to her or again, the cosmic stuff, whatever it is, but that whole encounter with the Force healer gave her enough to compare that or to pair that up with her feelings for Cassian and knowing how important he is as that messenger, that she's willing to let him go. Like, again, I made the comparison to Shmi letting Anakin go. But yeah, I mean, this whole speech, and I'm not going to I don't want to get into all the wording here of it because it's a long one, but it's so well done. It's so well written. It's heartbreaking. And you think about her saying that those last lines about, and when it's done, when it's over and we've won, we can do all the things we've ever wanted, everything we know we'd missed, I'll find you. That's the one that kind of puts that dagger in your heart, because you think about that very last scene. I posted this on social media last night, but that last scene where he's sitting there hugging Jyn, and right as that explosion goes off, you can see open his eyes. For the longest time, I always thought he was thinking about something. Why would he open his eyes there? And I know Cassian, at least the time during Rogue One, or Diego Luna said he was wanting to just kind of accept it, kind of thing. But in my own headcanon, I was thinking, okay, he's probably thinking about someone or something in that moment. And that's why he would open his eyes, especially since he's hugging Jyn that way. And now I tie it back to this scene about like his last moments were thinking about Bix is still out there and was trying to find him, and he's never going to see her again. It's just heartbreaking. I mean, it's absolutely devastating and wrecking, but it's, again, just incredible writing. And I don't know what else to say, but
yeah, I think Bix also knew that, even if they do run away, like these things are going to keep finding them. There's no running from the Empire. And she truly, like you said, she truly believes that Cassian is one of the true important people that is supposed to move them along and to make this successful. There's something about him, and she believes, whether it's the Force or whatever it might be, there truly is something unique about him. It's not just luck. There's just something special, and she has to make sure that continues. Otherwise, he's going to miss out on that, and they're going to be hunted, and then none of their dreams are going to be able to come true because they'll constantly be running, or the Empire will keep finding people. You can't hide forever, and so she just recognizes all those things, and she has to make the decision for him because he's not going to make the right one, at least from her perspective of what she believes. But I guess the question I had back to you, though, is do you think this is the end of Bix for the series? Do you think we see Bix at all in the next week for those last 3 episodes? Or do you think this is kind of how it ends for her, and Cassian is now on his path, no more distractions from Bix, and she doesn't show up at all?
Or I think it's the latter. Yeah,
I don't think they'll see each other either, but do you think we'll see her at all on screen, like doing something else, or what her fate is in any kind of way?
No, I think you and I had a brief exchange on text about this. You'd asked the question as well. And I think I said, we wouldn't see her again in the series. And I don't know that I want to, given that speech that she delivered, and
you don't want to cheapen it.
Yeah. I don't want to cheapen what she did, her sacrifice for him. And it feels like we could go down that path. I mean, I won't say never, but I wouldn't want it, at least in this series. No, where Bix ends up is a really, really good question. I think a lot of people are already talking about, did she end up joining the rebellion later on once she finds Cassian had passed?
Well, she could still be part of the rebellion, just doing something else.
Right? Yeah. And she's got Cassian's son now too, so he's out there.
Oh,
so
stop it.
I'm just saying, man.
Good night, everybody.
But yeah, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to take away from the moment, but yeah, I don't know that she'll come back. And I don't know that I want her to come back. So I'd like a book or something, right? I don't think they're going to do a series. Who knows, really? But I'd like to know more about where did she go and all that. By the way, there's some folks in here. Someone was saying B2 EMO, so B2, that droid. We don't know where he's been. We haven't seen him since like that first arc, I think, when he was left on the planet there on Mina Rao or whatever. He's just sitting there in the cornfields, I guess, or the wheat fields waiting for.
Well, no, they went with Brasso's girlfriend.
Okay. Well, I know people are saying like, oh, where did he go and all that. I'm like, I don't know. I think he's going to come back in this next arc. I think that we'll see him again. I don't think Gilroy would just drop him like that. And I'd love to see
how devastated would B2 be that he's been replaced by K2.
No, but that's not it. I'm saying we're going to see.
He's going to turn into Chopper.
that would be something. I want to see like a you know, a R2D2 C3PO, but with K2SO and B2. Like, I'd like to see that exchange. What is that relationship like? Even if it's brief, I'd love to see that. So he's not gone. He's not gone. Don't worry about it. I know a lot of people are asking that question, but he's not gone. Okay. All right. I don't want to talk anymore about that.
One of versus you CPU with Andor Jr. You know what this sounds like? Like with the whole baby thing. It just sounds like Kanan and Hera, like all over again. But
that's okay.
Okay.
People have babies, Jonesy. When a man loves a woman,
yeah, and he's gonna die soon after. He leaves a gift.
She leaves a gift.
Good.
That's how it works. Broom boy. He's not broom boy. Do the math, bro. Okay. The last part of this is that KX unit. So, you know, of course, he's devastated. He's running out there trying to find her. He goes out to the landing pad and learns that the transport took off that morning, which is what she left out on. Then he's kind of left there and finally comes to his senses, and someone's calling for him to come inside, that they're ready. They've got the droid repaired and they're ready to kind of fire it up. I think it's the Drola was his name, which is the tech that had turned it on, gives him some goggles. He offers him the goggles, and Cassian takes the blaster, which is appropriate. Those two guys next to him, they fire up their blasters. We'll all just get ready for him. But, you know, K2 comes on, says, hello. If I've offended you, I apologize. If not, I'd appreciate you pointing that elsewhere. And it fades to black and we end there. So yeah, clearly we're going to get him.
Sound effects were a little over the top of like firing him up, but it was still kind of cool.
It was, yeah, for dramatic purposes, I guess, is what they were going for.
Yeah. And we can give Cassian his emotional support droid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it. Like I mean, I know you joked about it and I can see it, right? Bix had to leave so that Cassian could come in and kind of fill that spot. But, you know, this is a newer, he's kind of shed some skin here. I don't know. I was thinking about doing a whole episode on this too, or at least talking about this kind of, you know, when we do kind of a character spotlight for Cassian Andor. This is kind of one of those pivotal watershed moments for him where he is now free of all of that. And so he may embrace it. Like, I think we might see that. We clearly see that in Rogue One. I just don't know how much he's embraced the loss here and understands what Bix has done for him. I wonder if they're going to even be able to do that, because we're going to jump a year ahead. Again, we're not going to see all that development. We're just going to jump right into him being okay with everything and probably working really well with K2SO or whatever. But I don't know. The more, as good as this series gets and as good as it's been, the more I really, really wish they would have done 5 seasons and given us like 12 episodes each one. But
yeah, I think if there's something that's kind of missing, and we kind of saw this in the early reviews, is do we truly get enough of Cassian becoming a leader? Like, we see him with incredible skills, incredible ability, and pulling these jobs off. But is he actually like learning to lead and showing leadership abilities? We have to see it in the last arc, and we will, I think. But has enough been going on to where we have seen enough of it through this far? And I think, to your point, with a little more time to develop some of that, we would have had a better arc in that regard. And that's been a bit of a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. It doesn't take anything away from the arc. It doesn't take anything away from the series.
Yeah, definitely not saying it's not
right.
That is anything but great, because it's fantastic. But that part has been a little. It hasn't been as obvious, I guess, as maybe we thought it would be, or it hasn't been as clear and really articulated of like what are the lessons he's actually learning of becoming a leader, except having to let go of Bix. And really, he didn't even make that decision. And, you know, some of these things, right? He's kind of actively fighting against it the entire time until someone else helps him make the choice, when you can argue whether that was his choice or not in the first place. So
yeah,
I think that's if you're going to poke some holes and do a little bit of criticism, I think that's probably the one thing they've really laid into how he becomes a leader. And we really need to see something pay off in the last 3 episodes to sell us on that line that they delivered to us early on.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. I don't think we're being obtuse in saying that, because you're right. I mean, he's had moments of leadership, but he's not demonstrated himself as a leader. If anything, he's just demonstrated himself as a survivalist, as a soldier, right? As he was pointed out, but we haven't seen him in that leadership role.
Right.
You could even argue, even in like Rogue One, I don't know that I guess we get moments where he is kind of like you see him more of as a leader, right? But
you're kind of going the path I was going to. Rogue One, he was still kind of a little bit of a mercenary, but he definitely inspires people around him, and he has that capability. We see that in episode 1, right? So
Yeah.
we know it's there. So without question, we know the character is capable of. We know Diego Luna is bringing it out in ways, but is the story arc kind of shaping him in that way? We'll have to see what 10, 11, and 12 show us to see what has he put in motion since then. Unfortunately, we'll see. Well, what we'll probably end up with is something that has happened off screen over the last year. That does that feel satisfying is going to be the question we'll have to answer at the end of that.
Right. Yeah, Connor Williams chimed in, says, I did like how Luthen acknowledged that Cassian had been a follower this whole time. He hasn't been making his own decisions. And so, yeah, he's got every opportunity now to make his own decisions, especially going into this last arc. So hopefully we see some good examples of that.
Yeah. But still, man, these 3 episodes, I think many people out there, if not most, best 3 of the season so far of the 9. It's hard to argue that point. I think when people think of it, Andor, the series, I think these are the types of episodes that we are all really banking on and got really comfortable with and really enjoyed in season 1. And man, they ratcheted up a whole nother level than what we would expect. And I think episode 8 is like it's just a masterclass in how do you create tension and really deliver story and build a complete picture. And I really hope it gets some recognition because I think it's really worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of recognition.
Yeah, all of our amazing folks in the live stream. KTTcast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to this, we'd love for you to come out. Our shows for the breakdowns, of course, are free for everybody. We appreciate that. Thanks for the folks that came out. John Maloney, My Star Wars Guys, Sky, Kathy, Alex, Music Train, Matthew, Rebel Scum, One versus CPU, Zeralins, Qui-Gon J, Wyatt, Jorge, Mechanized, Steph, Connor. If I missed anyone, not intentional, my sincerest apologies, but we appreciate everyone out there. We see you folks in the background as well. We hope you'll come out and say hello next time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, we'd love to have you more often. So if you want to like the video, subscribe, hit the little bell so make sure you're notified when we come online. Please go and check out Lauren's video as well on the new Justine Ireland book, The Wayseeker. So The Acolyte, The Wayseeker. Great job over there. You're going to want to check that out to see if that book is for you and to get her take on it.
Yep. For Patreon members, this weekend, we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Sith. So we've had a chance to watch that as part of the 20th anniversary. I bought some socks I think I'll have to show. They actually came in a VHS cassette case. That's how cool they are. So
those are always fun.
Yeah, I'll show you that as well. But that'll be for Patreon. We're just going to, wax and reminisce about Revenge of the Sith and talk about our favorite moments, that kind of stuff. But that'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll be back to kind of wrap this whole Andor thing up next week as well. And then we've got a ton of stuff to get to still. Like we're still backlogged on everything from Star Wars Celebration. There's some other stuff. We've got Tales of the Underworld that we haven't even touched just yet. And that's all going to lead us directly smack into at some point when we get to Visions Volume 3, which should be a lot of fun as well. So tons and tons of stuff yet to come. I think that's going to do it. Anything else before we get out of here, Jonesy?
I don't know what else there is to say, my friend.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys here on the next stream.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.